Got it.
Yeah, Death Wish. I mean, I bought this on eBay. I don't know, like I said, in a drunken rage, must be about fucking 10 years ago. But I bought originally a t-shirt and I just went blah, 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 Death Wish, fucking killer, demon preacher, etc. Bought the thing and it arrived and it was like small. So I had to like a big lad cut out the t-shirt and then stitch it with my own fair hands
Fancy.
onto a €3 well, we can't call them wife beats anymore. They're just, what are they called now? Sleeveless. I don't know.
Yeah.
Gun stores €3 jobs.
Yeah, no, it said that they probably didn't sell too many of them back in the day anyway, really. They probably have a surplus of them sitting around.
No, I think it was actually made by one of the guys in the band. I mean, the eBay address was somewhere like Stockton on Tees or something, or, you know.
Well, they're from the south coast, aren't they?
Where were they from?
Brighton. Them and Hydrovian and a couple other bands were all from Brighton.
Well, I mean, to me, that this Death Wish album is one of the best of that whole genre. I still listen to that a lot. I mean, okay, it kind of starts with a super banger and then slowly steps off the edge of, you know, top
Did you
notch.
listen to Deliverance? You know, the English thrash band from around then as well.
But I didn't make
Similarly
impact.
themed kind of. You might like them. Check them out.
But this is kind of like a super underrated record, I reckon. I mean, for it's 88. I mean, that there's not much else happening in 88, especially in the UK, that sort of is a similar brutality.
Not really. As I said, some people would be into like Hydrovian and things of that nature. What was the other band? The reformed for a wee while. Annihilated. Do you remember them?
Annihilated. Oh yeah. Annihilated. Didn't they have an EP out in Wild Rags? I thought they were American, no? It's got a sort of
No.
soldier with a gun on the front or something, isn't it?
I think it was whatever the label that did all the Virus albums and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, right. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's a kind of it's an English label, isn't it, from somewhere in the north of England?
Yep. But yeah, it must have been fucking very tough for all those bands because they were probably looking at their mates like Onslaught getting money thrown at them, and they were sitting around having to record in the basement in a shoe.
But this record sounds like I mean, it has a fucking good production. The drums sound killer. It has quite a big bass tone. It also had something that appeals to black metal fans. Like there's something in the Death Wish record when I play somebody who couldn't be bothered with, you know, English thrash, and they go, oh, and they hear some Destroyer, Niflheim, something a bit harsher in it, you know.
I think if there's a bit of a Persecution Mania buzz. It'd be around that same time of them being. They were probably big into Sodom and stuff, you know.
88, yeah. It still has a guy. I mean, I'm still a big fan. They had another album as well, but I wasn't into that one as much, with a kind of face and profile or something. I didn't like that as much.
Yeah, like you know what? It's weird. Like so much of that music, like these guys are Hydrovian and stuff. It kind of seemed like it was specifically only for English people. Like you know, I never met anyone from Ireland or Europe who was really a big fan. You know.
Yeah, there used to be was it Zeister, Black Faith. I remember that record as well. It must be even 86 or 87. You know, sort of proto death thrash. You know.
So have you been sitting about in the house listening to the King Diamond Christmas or the Merciful Fate Christmas song? Full stop.
Can I just for the record, the next person who shares that as a song on Instagram, fuck off. Really.
Do you think, like
have an original
as a
idea.
Merciful Fate fan, do you find it kind of a bit embarrassing, or do you just appreciate it?
No,
same as nuns have no fun, same kind of deal, or what?
No, I can't stand it. I mean, it's just like, I don't know how King Diamond gets away with that, because, you know, you've got the Merciful Fate cultism, which I totally understand from new, younger fans. It's well deserved. And then they skip on to King Diamond, and like No Presents for Christmas is 85. It's one of the first things he does. It's maybe even, it sounds like the same recording as Fatal Portrait. So he's planned a Christmas single probably upon his leaving of Merciful Fate. And, you know, I mean, I have the versions of it there, and the one with Riddle, Rudolph, and bells, and yeah, it's like, fuck off. How did he get away with this?
I don't like. It's weird though, isn't it? Because it's not as if it's one of those things that, like, at Christmas time he plays at his gigs or anything like that. You know, it's not
Yeah, or
fondly
that anyone,
remembered, is it?
or that anyone looks forward to hearing it or anything. It's just, what are you doing? I mean, okay, Kerrang at the time would get other musicians to, you know, dress up for Christmas, and they would
Yeah.
stupidly oblige. Probably there was a lot of cocaine and whiskey and a few couple of, you know, brown envelopes exchanged. But King Diamond went and actually made a song that starts with Jingle
No,
Bells.
but that's it, isn't it? Like Raven have like a photo shoot of them like in the giant box under a Christmas tree, and then bursting out of the box, much to the kids' delight or whatever. Like,
And even Kronos has a fucking Santa suit fucking photo
well,
shoot.
just brings us on to the next one. What about Black Xmas by Venom? Like,
Black Xmas. Yeah, it's, I mean, that's Camp for the Storm, isn't it? It's side one of Camp for the Storm. Yeah, I mean, I told,
first song.
probably said this before. No, the first song is Chanting the Priest, isn't it? Or is it Black Xmas? See, Camp for the Storm is one of those records that just kept being re-released by lots and lots of shitty labels and different covers, and all the track listing is all the other way around, you know?
Yep.
I mean, I was members, I was about, it must be when Camp for the Storm came out, I was standing in a record shop in Dublin, and I had heard Nightmare, and I was just starting to get into Venom. It must be early, I don't know, somewhere in 87. And I had my £5 or whatever, and I had like a War with Satan in one hand or whatever, and Camp for the Storm in the other hand. And I went with Camp for the Storm, so I figured it's the newest one. It must be
It
the
has to be the
newest one.
best. Has to be the best one, obviously.
But I do think that there's 3 or 4 good songs. That the title track is killer.
Yeah,
You know,
I think
Chanting of the Priest is good. You know,
realistically, chanting with the priests and stuff. Do you think? I would say that there's probably some better songs in it than there is on Possessed. You know.
yeah. Under a Spell is a great song. That's a, I mean, it's, you know, he's trying to sing a bit, which he can do. But yeah, Count for the Storm is better than almost most songs on Possessed. I mean, Possessed is, we talked about it before on this, but it's just a fucking, it just sounds like a cocaine mess, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how Neat Records was able to keep them. I know, obviously, like his brother, Abaddon's brother, was their manager and one of the owners at Neat and stuff. But you would imagine that once they started selling records, major labels would have come to Venom and said, "Listen, we need to get you into a studio with, like,
yeah,
someone who knows how to produce metal records of that time, like Michael Wagner or whoever."
It sounds like it to me. It feels like when you listen to that Neat Records podcast, what was it called? Faster, Louder, is it?
Mm.
Which is brilliant, by the way. It's one of the best podcasts about metal. The guy who did the Hot and Heavy Express radio show, he narrates it, and he does this fucking great job at, in his old Newcastle accent. That was a bad attempt, but it's fucking brilliant. But what you get the impression is that, like, Neat Records was, they were kind of, you could just imagine them smoking cigars, wearing old, coffee and yellow suits, and half the team were also looking after comedians and fucking northern working men's clubs, fucking juggling acts or whatever.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's a real north
like
of England kind of thing.
Selling war comics, like they were like, we don't know what this is about, but we know that, like, people who are between the age of 11 and 15 really like them, so let's just keep making, like, all those war comics in the 80s in England. There were ones about, like, the good Germans who were fighting the Russians, because the Russians would have been the bad guys at that stage, so they were like, this is the good German and his tiger tank versus the nasty Russians.
My in my grandparents' house, there used to be a potato sack about 4 foot high, filled with comics, Battle and fucking all this kind of stuff, all these war comics that me and my cousin would read religiously when we were like, 6, 7, 8, 9. It was always Donner und Blitzen, das ist kaputt, and like one hero just mowing down, like, super graphically, like fucking 40 Germans standing in a, outside a tank or something like this, But they were the propaganda you could see slightly changed every couple of years, You got one from 1960. It was pretty straight
but
ahead.
You're 100% spot on. Like, I think that's the thing with Neat Records, is they were just selling products and they had no idea what was good or bad or anything. They were just like, let's just make them. And
what was the first single? Was Tigers of Pantang, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I could check that right now, couldn't I?
I think there's Pang Tang, and then like maybe was the Blitzkrieg very live single? I think maybe it was.
Oh no, the number one must be I Don't Want Your Money, Honey, Raven, which is 79.
I think it's that early, is it?
Yeah, I think it is. I have the fucking 7-inch there. That's one of my favorite Raven songs. Oh no, okay.
Yes, great. You see, whenever they supported Metallica there at a gig recently in America, and Lars Ulrich introduced them, and he said, "Now just come out and play Don't Need Your Money, Honey 10 times in a row, please." Like,
so first single was Motorway. All I Want to Be Is Your Romeo. Then Janie McKenzie, who I think is some local singer. Tigers of Pantang is number 3. Fist. Name, rank, and serial number. That's 4. White Spirit, which is...
I was going to say White Spirit.
White Spirit. Is that where Yannick Gers came from?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so 6th is Raven. And Aragorn, Black Ice, and Venom is 8th with Live Like an Angel. And that's... So the first one is 79. See how quickly I did that? I could be like one of those,
Internet's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, the internet's cool guys who sit off camera and go blah 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 blah. Just don't want to ruin the illusion that I'm not in a studio there by moving the little thing at the back.
My unholy crypt.
I know. Look at that. Anyway, yeah, then you get Raven again, Blitzkrieg, Bitches Sin. You're not gonna make it in the world with your band, calling your band Bitches Sin, are you? But
you can imagine the Samson-y vibes of them, big thick moustache and like white togas on, look,
Well, I'll tell you what, the first 15 singles, 5 are Raven. That'll tell you what you need to know. Jaguar,
see, they got a lot of big early breaks though, didn't they? Like they supported Ozzy Osbourne on the Blizzard of Oz tour and like a whole bunch of other things.
Didn't what's his name come from Tigers of Pantang? Who was in Whitesnake then, and Tin Lizzy?
John Sykes.
Did John Sykes come from there?
Mm-hmm.
I saw John Sykes once. I was at a Metal Blade record party, must be 7 or 8 years ago, and it was in LA, and we were in the Rainbow or whatever, or the bar opposite the Rainbow, and it was just people around, milling around, everything, and I just saw this dude with just huge hair, about 6'4", just standing at the bar, sinking whiskeys with sunglasses on, and a tiny little Asian woman, wife, I don't know, just standing there silently sinking whiskeys and coke.
Just waiting for people to come up to him.
No, he really didn't look like he wanted anyone to come up to him. Because I was like, it's fucking John Sykes, let's go up and talk to him. And Will from Angel Witch, who's working there at the time as well, was like, doesn't look like he wants to be talked to. He did not look impressed at all. Yeah, he was he had a big flouncy blouse on as well.
I was reading it for some reason, listening to an interview with your man
His hair was not unlike yours at this current moment.
Your man Carmen Appice was talking about a Blue Murder reunion, and he was saying that they rehearsed and everything was going grand, and they're like, okay, brilliant, songs are written, new album, let's go. And then John Sykes was like, I really think it should be called John Sykes and Blue Murder.
Yeah.
And Carmen Appice was like, well, then it should be called Carmen Appice, John Sykes and Blue Murder, So
it must be funny for those dudes, because I mean, back in 1989, Blue Murder was kind of a big deal, 1988, 89. It's not bad. But now, just like we were watching the footage of the King Cobra reunion.
Well, see, you know what, man, that's spot on. The only place that they will get a gig will be on Sweden Rock.
Sweden Rock.
The little devil in Tilburg, and that'll be the whole tour.
And Bang Your Head will have them. And then, Sweden Rock, and they'll come out in front of a couple of thousand people going like, oh, okay, cool, Blue Murder. But you're not back, because this just hasn't traveled through the decades. Blue Murder.
I know some of my older mates would be into them and stuff, but it all seemed like an American thing to me, like Damn Yankees or something, where it wasn't really for European audiences,
Who's in which band? I mean, Blue Murder did Blue Murder not have the guy, did it have Key Marcello in it, but did it have the guy also who sang on Black Sabbath, who then died? What's the young guy's name?
No.
Who else?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised though, because I know that obviously it wasn't going to be Sykes singing. Like he hadn't discovered his vocal prowess by that stage,
Well, seeing as we're here, I can look it up. Wow. Okay, John Sykes, Carmen Appice, Ray Gillen. That's it, Ray Gillen. who was wasn't he in Badlands, and he sang on Eternal Idol by Sabbath and then died, and then they got back in.
Good album, isn't it?
It's a fucking brilliant record. I love a record. Then he sang on it. Then they got back the cat because
there was unfinished cat food that needed to be devoured.
And then, but then he Eternal Idol has been recently released as a double CD with both versions on it, and yeah, that guy could fucking sing. Who else is on there? Marco Mendoza. Okay, he seems to have been in every band forever. Cozy Powell, Anders Johansson. Wow, from Yngwie and Hammerfall, I think.
I get the feeling though that was probably something that was like an automatic major label kind of deal, where John Sykes and Carmen PC probably approached the label together and said, "Hey, we're going to set up this band with this cool singer guy," and they were just like, "Okay."
Well, those kind of things still happen. You look at Frontiers Records or whatever they are from Italy, and we just watched footage of like David Ellefson out on tour with
Jeff Scott Soto.
And there, look at Richie. What's that band with Richie Kotzkin and the guy from Mr. Big, and they're just put together by the name.
Is it the
Winery Dogs?
Dogs, or is it
Winery Dogs? It feels like this label have a pool of about 25 old professional musicians, and they just put them together intermittently to make an album that sells to nerdy kind of proggy fans who can play to like 300-400 who come to see Billy Sheehan go whatever. Yep. That's their living still. So maybe it was the same in who the fuck is Tony Franklin? Sorry, Tony, you're wearing a no top and a tie, which is a strong look.
Did you see was it Abaddon from Venom, or no, it was Mantis going on about saying that if they were going to do like a reunion, he would want Al Barnes to be there as well, like all the assorted other characters, like that people would be like.
I hated him. He was on the Venom Live 90 VHS, the show in London, which is like. But he was also in Mantis's band, Wind of Change. Yeah. He was the guitar player in that. Remember the bit?
He was the guy who was doing all the muscle maneuvers.
No, that's not him. That's the keyboard player, who was like wearing a little Borat top, going. Burr, 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 burr. No. Anybody who doesn't know this, they should go and find Mantis Deceiver, which is
better than all of Venom's records from both eras.
It's fucking amazing because it's kind of like a complex story about a woman who's working in an office who then wants to rock at night and goes, like tears off her office clothes and gets dressed up in her metal clothes.
And she's got dockets for the Mantis performance.
Yeah, but she's also allowed backstage. That's the twist. And it's
great. They obviously had a massive falling out with the singer between recording the song and doing the video, because he doesn't really feature in the video, or someone must have said that he looked like a pedophile or something, because they were just like, just cut this guy completely. Like,
he's trying to rock a sort of Graham Bonnet vibe with a sort of weird kind of like trilby hat and a long coat.
Yeah, he looks like the guy from Rough Cut in the Worst Stars video.
Rough Cut. Paul Shortino.
Yeah, that's sort of
vibe. Paul Shortino trying to do it sort of James Dean kind of thing. Paul Shortino is in Spinal Tap. He's the one where when they go to the in the hotel, and he goes and the manager goes, "This twisted old fruit hasn't got our rooms," and he goes, "Well, I may be twisted, but I'm as God made me." And that's before they banned the record for being sexy, and he goes, "What's wrong with being sexist?" He goes, "Sexy." It's just after that scene, the other rock star at the.
Oh man, he's amazing. Duke Fame.
But no, the guy who's at the that's Paul Shortino.
Is it? Wow. Okay. So,
good singer, but that he was also in that Rough or King Cobra reunion, wasn't he?
Really amazing. It's sort of like it's always going to be one of those guys. It's like the way like James Riviera does all the sort of thrash power stuff. Like I'd say him or like Ron Keel could front any of those bands, like
or the guy from Black and Blue, or for any younger listeners watching who haven't understood a single reference that we've just made, what would you say?
They're not really worth going to don't bother going and looking up the references, because you're probably not going to like the songs.
Badlands were quite a good band, though. I quite like Badlands. That was with Jakey Lee, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was just capitalizing on his great Ozzy Osbourne fame, like, you know.
And so who was in Damn Yankees? That was Ted Nugent.
Yeah, and it was one of the guys. I
Neil
thought one of
Sean,
the guys
right?
from Duff is one of the guys from Dokken not in it. Jeff
Pilson.
Pilson, no, or
I think Pilson was in it. But who was Neil Sean in it?
no, that was Hardline. That was
Hardline. I have some Hardline CDs somewhere.
that's my girlfriend's favorite band is Hardline. So it is unbelievably like.
Yeah, I quite enjoy them. I mean,
You're
favorite
getting
band?
me hot, Cherie was their tune, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not. I mean, I'm not sure I'd put them in favorite band status, but you know.
No. Um, how was the wine consumption over Christmas then, man?
Well, it's been pretty. It hasn't been too excessive. I do this thing on Christmas Day where it's like a sort of self-flagellation thing. I go and I run from my parents' house all the way around Howth Hill and all the way back down, which is like 14.7, 15.2 kilometers. And you have to punish yourself and run always through the mud and the rain and pick a record and do the whole thing. So I did that and then felt utterly terrible and had to, doze off like an old man after eating tons of carbs. But now it was, more information than you needed, but it hasn't been too excessive, to be honest with you.
Did you get a cool new Adidas tracksuit to go running in?
I tell you what, man, the older I get, the more I'm looking up cool tracksuits. I mean, I bought a Chile 1962 sort of like retro Adidas tracksuit the other day. I was just like, oh, I think I need this. And I have slowly but surely, I spend more on
leisure wear.
Well, cool tracksuits rather than heavy metal tops. Talk amongst yourself for a minute.
Or little rags for wrapping around your wrists, or
I mean, look at these. Product placement.
You need to go to AliExpress, man. You can get all your amazing knockoff ones. You can get Adidas with 4 stripes or even 5 stripes if you fancy.
€20. €20 they cost me. Anyway, I don't. That's not going to sit well with the true metal crowd, is it?
Yeah, but like at the same time, like, are we assuming that the true metal crowd were just sitting outside on Christmas Day, shunning electricity or the warmth of their family, or what?
No, I meant the Adidas product placement.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I tell you what, if you were getting product placement from Adidas, we need to have a discussion off air.
Yeah, I mean, think of the people who get product placement from Adidas. You're talking about Kanye and fucking blah, 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 Dua Lipa probably or something,
Not no more for Kanye.
Oh, yeah.
He'll be having that revoked.
I think he might do. I mean,
if you went into the bookies, would they give you good odds on his Spotify numbers going down? Because I would imagine they'll stay the same.
I mean, I did casually have a look at how many people follow him on Spotify, and it's obviously insane. But they haven't removed him, which of course they would do somebody much smaller. But you wonder, does a man? I mean, do you want to? Is there any point talking about this? But it opens a weird door. But it's weird to watch. It's almost like you're watching somebody having a manic episode in real time. I watched all the 4 kind of podcast, sort of appearances in a row that he made on, and it was just sort of like, does he have no mates who just go, lad, will you fucking relax, will you? Or
sure, didn't Gene Simmons say that he had no mates? Like, I think probably there are a lot of people out there who are like, yeah, I don't really have any friends at all. Just hang about with my money and that's about it. But then you would have to have mates to get like drugs off and things like that. He's hardly going and meeting lads on the corner, is he? Like,
I don't think that those are his kind of drugs. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It seems to me like with somebody like him, it's got to be prescription stuff, and he's obviously, maybe he's off whatever he had, but I mean, the last one, the Gavin McInnes one, and the one, I mean, he was on Tim Pool, he kind of did the rounds of the sort of alt-right, center-right podcasts, and each one was more insane than the next. And most people don't I mean, the Alex Jones one, he takes out like a fishing like net and a bottle of Yahoo drink, and it's Netanyahu, and he does a little like puppet thing along the stage going, like, and Alex Jones is like, what the fuck are you, what? and he's got this Balenciaga like face gimp mask thing on, and he's doing like a puppet show. Like most people, I think, didn't watch. I watched it, just like, what the fuck is going on? And does he have no mates who go, mate, come on, like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Or I don't know, absolutely crazy. Anyway.
See, the thing is, I suppose whenever you're worth so much money and like, you know, the numbers are going up,
Yeah.
you're just like, I don't need advice from anyone, like, you know.
Well, I mean, we talked about this before in relation to old big bands and heavy metal, and I mean, your Axl Roses and people like this. I mean, do they have a mate who goes, "Come on, man, Chinese democracy and the piano stuff and Buckethead and whatever's going on. Come on, man, time to get the band back together. Remember your mates? Remember how cool you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Stop with this nonsense." I mean, how many million billionaires who must have no one with them to go, come on. And same with songwriting for all these huge bands. We talked about this before, Maiden and whatever, where somebody just goes, "No, well, sure, why would I listen to anybody?" Like, you know?
Well, like, you know, Axl Rose doesn't really do that many interviews, but that is something that he said in some of the interviews that he's done since they got back together, saying it's great having, you know, mates in the band again. And, you know, I have people who can share if something's a disaster. It's not. So, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I remember.
So speaking of, oh, go on here. Finish your point there. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say. I mean, the difference is, I remember Duff McKagan playing with. Remember, he had a band which were quite small for a while, like just a standard rock band. It was about 15 years ago, and they played in the Pint in Dublin, which is maybe 250 people, and he just sat on the stage after the show, fielding questions from people and just chatting to everybody. And you were like, fucking Duff McKagan, you know?
He does seem quite dead sound now, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I read his book, and I wish he just didn't keep saying punk rock 15 times a page. It's like, I get it, mate, we get it. You weren't into, you know, Twisted Sister and Doc and whatever. We get it, you're a punk rocker. You don't need to keep mentioning it every fucking page. It's okay. You weren't you weren't friends with WASP, but you probably were. But it's fine. But the book is really good. And also remember his blogs back in the day about music industry advice. They were really good, actually.
He's probably not too far off on that. So, man, speaking of the guy who produced our album, Scott, is making this Cradle of Filth Ed Sheeran album.
Really? Or are you about to? Are you breaking some news that you're not supposed to? Although they
could be a sideman. But so what do you think? What do you think of that? Like, in the sense of, like, that's pretty mad, isn't it? Like, you know, Ed Sheeran's probably got one of the biggest listenerships of like people under 25 in the UK.
Under 18 by the judging crowd.
But like, there's a whole bunch of those people could end up getting into black metal by listening to whatever sort of awful music they make together. Like, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I mean, a part of me thinks it's disgraceful. Just like, why would you fucking bother? I mean, do Cradle really need to do that? I mean, is any Ed Sheeran fan going to get Cradle of Filth? Or, I mean, Ed Sheeran, you know, he did used to busk, you know, at the end of the road and stuff. But I mean, I did do a kind of a little recon, shall we say, of watching 3 or 4 or 5 songs live, and I just thought to myself, if this is what young people are into, then we are doomed. I mean, this is the most pathetic, simpering nonsense. One ginger lad with a drum machine, and you know, and playing to a stadium full of people. How is he where he is?
He's one crew guy. He's a guy who drives him and does his sound.
It breaks my brain. How is this guy?
You know?
I mean, maybe he's like, you know, maybe he's like a modern day Nielsen or something, where how you look doesn't seem to have any bearing on how many teenage girls seem to like your music. I don't know. Maybe that's probably unfair to Nielsen as a songwriter, because I mean, Ed Sheeran is patently childish. I mean, what is it? Who cares what I think about it? But Cradle of Filth and Ed Sheeran making her. I mean, it's just. What's it going to be about?
Yeah, but I was saying more from. I'm not asking. Like, do you think it's going to be good?
Is it going to be like a Hogwarts themed album about, you know, slithering versus name another thing from Hogwarts? I don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly the target zone right there. But
Post
like
Stranger, it's post Stranger Things thing, you know.
theoretically, though, it could get a whole bunch more people into that kind of Cradle of Filth style music. Would you welcome that, or would you rather that it stayed where it is in the underground?
No, I don't care. I mean, Cradle of Filth, Cradle of Filth have one or two of the biggest selling black metal albums of all time. Just Gonna Embrace Cult in the Beast sold 500,000, I think, almost physical copies. I mean, they were huge. They were not underground. No, I mean, I don't begrudge. It's not Cradle of Filth or, I mean, if you're 12 or 13 or 14 years old, the thing about it is like, we've crossed the Rubicon of being young in any way to appeal to young people other than just pure Stranger Things style nostalgia. Cradle of Filth are the same age as we are. Well, I mean, I am. They're almost 50. And so it's a 14, 15-year-old kid who likes that Sheeran in good or not in good conscience, but is actually going to go, oh, I like this new band Cradle of Filth who are nearly 50 years old. They're not. It's totally the wrong move for Ed Sheeran. For what Ed Sheeran should do is make a fucking record with, I don't know, a band who are.
Yeah, but see, I think he's done a whole bunch of like different genres of making rap records and stuff. So this is just like, oh yeah, I want to go and do this. So
Well,
I'm
maybe
going to go and do this because these lads live down around the road from me, you know.
that's what it appears to be. I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't think any kids 2-3 years down the road are going to be listening to, Merciful Fate albums because of Ed Sheeran making a record with Cradle of Filth. But I don't know. I mean, listen, maybe Ed Sheeran's a lovely dude, and Cradle of Filth are like, here, do you want to put some acoustic fucking guitar over these fucking riffs? And do you have a riff? And I mean, look, he can do what the fuck he wants, if maybe he's a good rhythm fucking metal player, I have no idea. Maybe he's an old metal dude. Maybe he was into fucking. Maybe he can fucking slide into my DMs and go, "Fuck you." I liked Haunting the Chapel in 1988. I kind
When
of
he was one.
yeah. He seems like a dude in his mid-40s, right? No, early 40s.
I don't think so. I think he's pretty young.
Oh,
He is. But yeah, I don't know. It's like these kind of crossover things happen kind of rarely, don't they? Like, and it is usually like it's not usually a kind of situation where one artist is
oh yeah,
exposing.
he's 31. I just assumed because of the way he looks that he was in his early 40s. He does look like Nielsen. If people don't know who Nielsen is, he was the guy who didn't he do All by Myself? That guy.
Yep.
Yeah, who was like one of the biggest stars in the world in 1974, 73, and then sort of blew it and then died. He was in the original Hollywood Vampires, which was Alice Cooper, fucking what's his name from John Lennon.
Was it Steve Perry in the band as well, or someone like that?
No, it was Alice Cooper. The drummer of the fucking the Monkees.
Oh yeah, Mickey Dolenz, was it?
Mickey Dolenz. It was John Lennon. Yeah, and they were the original Hollywood Vampires who got to hang out in the little tiny bar at the top of the Rainbow. You had to go up an extra stair. So I don't know if you've ever been in it, but it was pretty fucking cool.
I thought there's two. Like there's the normal bar and then there's the upstairs. I didn't know there was an upstairs.
There's an upstairs. I got to go into it with a friend of mine who was working behind the bar. There was the day I was in there in the afternoon, and Lemmy was at the end of the bar, and it was quite obvious we were all, let's say, yeah, well, I'm not sure I can say that on YouTube. I'm not, kind of sharing the same extracurricular activities between us. And she goes, "Oh, you need to see this." And the little chain with the thing, you got to see this, and flicked on the light, and it was like, holy fuck. And then I looked down and I was like, this is the thing, and it's written outside the room. This is the room of the Hollywood Vampires, and it's got other names on the side, and you're just up there, and there's pictures of, like, of course, like John Lennon partying with fucking Alice Cooper in it. You're like, fucking hell. Yeah, the Rainbow, for anybody who's never been to the Rainbow in LA, I mean, it is an amazing place. I mean, the atmosphere in there and the sort of history, every booth you go and you go, Marilyn Monroe was in this booth, or whoever it was. It's fucking, yeah. I've been there maybe 3 or 4 times, and yeah, it was amazing.
It is. It's just one of those sort of rock and roll institutions, and it's full of people like, it's full of the sort of people you would imagine. People from the Bullet Boys hanging about there, where they've been for 30 years, being all like, is anyone from Interscope Records going to come around and see us?
That's exactly what happened. I was there, and I regret not speaking to Lemmy. We were there me and my mate were there early, and he was there at 4 or 5 p.m. and he was at the other end of the bar. And we had a mutual friend, my friend behind the bar, but there was no, I just go like, oh, it's fucking Lemmy. We're all a bit like hungover and a bit sort of, you know, not in the kind of like, oh, let's just go and casually like, hey, Lemmy, whatever. And I kind of regret that we didn't go and fucking say, hey.
When we were there, like the one behind the bar was just like, don't go over and annoy him whenever he's playing his machines because he will just tell you to fuck off. Like they're like, if he's not playing his machines and he's sitting at the bar, totally go over and say hi to him. But if he's not, just leave him alone. So.
And then at the other bar at the end of the night, we ended up sitting. I mean, talking with like lads from like, I mean, it must have been like, oh, I was the bass player in Cinderella in '89 for a while, and as you say, Bullet Boys and whatever else, like the sort of late 40s, early 50s kind of.
You can see how all these like awful like mega groups get together because there's just people sitting about in the rainbow being all like, well, I've just been fired from damn Yankees, and they're like, oh, great idea. Do you want to join Don Dawkins' band or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, and did you see that there's a documentary about the Rainbow that just came up on YouTube, and everybody's been watching it, and how it started, and the footage from the 60s up to the 70s and stuff, and it's quite incredible. And like just like every night of the week as a passenger, let's just say you were like, whatever, oh, let's go down and see who's in the Rainbow, and you go in and there's like fucking so many fucking famous people and rock stars around. Steve Perry standing at the bar, and just whoever's around. John Lennon mooching about drinking, and and then the 80s, of course.
That's it. Like, same as Lemmy. Like a lot of these people just landed. Like, I remember reading an interview with the guy Al Stewart, and he's just like, "Yeah, I went to America and went to the Rainbow, and was like, I'm never ever going back to England. This is way better than it is." And that's why you see all those pictures in Lemmy wearing his little denim hot pants because he's. Well, I now live in LA. It's great.
The first time Primordial ever played in LA, we were. I mean, it's like 12 years ago or something. And we'd come all the way down the West Coast, and we got to LA, and we were walking around, and it was just like sunshine, and it was palm trees, and it was just me and Kieran were walking around, and we went for like a drink just in the front bit of the Rainbow, and just standing there, and there was just like, it was just sunshine, palm trees, girls, cocktails, blah blah blah, and we we're just standing there like, and he goes, "Here, that shit that you like?" I went, yeah, and he goes, well, it makes sense here. He started talking and stuff. Oh, hang on. End of part 1. Recording and
Hey.
Yeah, it must be some sort of special Christmas deal from the Zoom. They give you 40 instead of 30 minutes. But
spend time with your loved ones.
Yeah, but no, the Rainbow is I mean, a couple of times I was there, 3 or 4 times I was there, I thought, I mean, you could feel a weight of sort of history, rock and roll history, that I'd never really felt in anywhere before. It's quite impressive, when you go in. It is a pretty cool place, I
think the thing is, a lot of the other places, man, by the time we got around to them, like, London and stuff, all those places like the 100 Club or the Marquee and all, they were gone, or if they weren't gone, they didn't mean the same thing that they used to mean,
And maybe we were too young. I mean, I stood outside the Marquee somewhere in about 89, and that was just about when it went. No, it was still there in 89, and the name meant something, and I went down and stood outside with my aunt, but it didn't seem, I was 14 or 15 or whatever, it wasn't.
So you weren't over to see Sepultura and Sodom then, no?
No, I went to London in 89 to visit my aunt for like maybe a week or something, and wandered around and went to Shades before it closed in the basement in London, bought a few old shirts, and I actually went to the Notting Hill Carnival, which is quite a fucking
great crack.
Yeah.
Clouds of dope smoke and stuff like that, and rastas men everywhere.
Sure, which for a 14-year-old lad in a Bathory shirt was a fucking head fuck. But it was cool. Yeah.
So tell me this, sorry dude for breaking across you, but Shades record shop, what was that like, man? I would love to have seen that.
I went there just before it closed, so it was kind of on its last legs, but I just remember you went down these couple of stairs, and there were all these old 80s metal posters everywhere, and it was big, long, kind of cavern, a big, long building, and just tons of shirts everywhere, and not many vinyls, because it was 89 or 90, so the vinyls were kind of dying out, and that was obviously the big business, was the shirts. and just going through all the shirts, but just
Yeah.
everywhere you looked was like Venom, Exodus, Hammersmith Odeon, Manowar, blah, blah. It was very much living in a certain age, and that age was 1981 to 88. And this is just before the 90s, so it was just about to be clobbered by
Yeah.
you know, grunge and stuff. So I'm not sure how it could have done, but
Well, Metal Forces started out as their fanzine.
yeah.
Look at so Metal Forces magazine started out as a fanzine that you got free with records in shades. And then after 3 or 4 issues, they were selling so many copies and stuff like that that it became a huge, massive deal. I
I
was
mean,
actually reading a brilliant article about it, and the guy, one of the guys who was working there, said that, you know, they were obviously doing insane business with Thrash and stuff at that stage, and
yeah,
whenever Anthrax would have an album out, there'd be a line around the block and stuff.
yeah.
And the first day that the Master of Puppets came out on a Monday morning, they sold 5,000 copies of it through Shades Records that day alone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same thing would have happened in Dublin with the Sound Cellar. When a big record came out, even in the early 90s, they were doing 300, 400, 500 copies in a day.
I remember whenever Reload came out by Metallica, queuing up in Uri to buy it. And there was a queue out, like, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning of about maybe, like, it wasn't the 80s, there was maybe about 40 people in the queue, you know?
Yeah. I remember buying maybe even by 91, Blessed Are the Sick, and standing in the record store all day. And maybe it sold 200-300 copies that day.
Mad, isn't it?
Yeah, and so go back to 88, 87. I mean, the day Injustice for All came out, I remember buying Injustice for All maybe 5 or 6 days after it came out, and I think the shop must be shifting hundreds and hundreds of copies every day. So like thousands of copies a week, you know, on vinyl, just the Sound Cellar alone, you know.
Which was nuts, you know?
I mean, for a while there was even a distributor just called like Metal Sounds or something out of Drogheda, who were doing, or I don't know what the fuck were they called, something disc maybe, and they were distributing the whole of Ireland. But it all just sort of disappeared somewhere around 92, 93. They didn't move to.
Well, you know, one of the things that again they were talking about it in this article was that specialist record shops were somewhere you had to go to if you wanted to buy Nasty Salvage records or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the only place you could buy them. And by the early 90s, places like Virgin Megastore and stuff had caught on, you know, and they were like, we need to have a pretty decent metal section or a decent whatever section, so that instead of you having to go to a specialist, even jazz shop to buy your jazz records, you can just buy everything under one roof, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I remember going to Virgin Megastore in the like 88, 87, 89, and the metal section was just fucking massive. I mean, it was just, you know, like 30, 40 feet long of stuff, you know, and they would have had everything. I remember going in there trying to find Terror and Submission by Holy Terror somewhere after Mind Wars came out, and but
like, how can you have 5,000 records in here but not have Holy Terror? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I really, it really upsets me that on Holy Terror El Revenjo, the remaster version of Mind Wars, they only got the money to do half the album. So El Revenjo has Terror and Submission, and then it has half of Mind Wars.
Their thinking would have been like, you know,
no, they ran out. They ran out. They ran out of money apparently, because it was I had kind of in the back of my head. It was like, I should pay for this. I should pay.
You know, man. You know what Holy Terror were like. You know what they were like as people as well. So there's probably a Megadeth style story there. Where it was like, let's spend half the money on hamburger meat and heroin, and then we'll spend the other half.
No. This is the El Revenjo CD, which was made about 10 years ago. It's
right, yeah, the double thing.
I mean,
you know, would you not say those?
If you're watching Holy Terror, I will try and pay for the second side 2 to be redone.
Because it was the first album that really needed done, wasn't it? Though.
What? Say again?
It was the first album that really needed remixed. Like the mix on Mind Wars was actually okay back originally, wasn't it?
Oh, it was great. But if you play the original Mind Wars CD, it's so dull compared to the vinyl. Like, it's so badly mastered. And El Revenjo, if you listen to the side 1 of El Revenjo, it sounds fucking incredible, but there's no Christian Resistance on it, whatever, because it's just like they ran out of money after 4 or 5 songs, you know, unless I'm desperately mistaken. But it was remastered with what's his name, famous Seattle producer, Jack Endino. Jack Endino picked the bones of Mind Wars and like it's incredible. Like they've done a job similar to Manowar have done with Into a Ride and Hell to England, which is they're amazing sounding. I don't know if anybody hasn't listened to them. The Into Glory Ride remaster, rejig, whatever the fuck it is, which has them. They've put in them talking in between the songs and whatever. I will go to that before the original Into Glory Ride. Now, it is incredible sounding. I thought they'd fuck it up because they're fucking 70, but it's, that sounds bad to say actually. That and Hell to England, the two of them sound absolutely incredible. Like I fell back in love hugely with Manowar. I always went, this is gonna be bollocks. And I played Into Glory Ride. And then one night, me and Paul from Primordial were sitting up about 5 a.m. and he has this incredible stereo in his house, and we just in the middle of nowhere cranked Gloves of Metal, and we're like, fuck. Just like fuck, it sounded otherworldly, absolutely incredible. Sorry, anyway, whatever. But yeah, Holy Terror never got to remix the side 2 of that record. Proper nerdism.
Well, wasn't I think the OG one, they said they were just listening to Led Zeppelin, so they tried to get the drums and the guitars to sound as Zeppelin 2-ish as humanly possible, which is quite a unique kind of sound, really, for a speed metal band, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can hear in Terror Submissions, somebody has gone, lads, when you turn down the fucking distortion on the guitar, we need to have more, notes. And the singing is very loud, and it's somebody's trying to make it like a heavy metal record, which it is a heavy metal record. It's a speed heavy metal record, I mean, Mind Wars has more jung 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 in it, but at the same time, they're still. I mean, Immoral Wasteland, the Iron Maiden would kill for that song.
Yeah, it's a great song.
I mean, if that had been on Seventh Son, you'd have been like, yep. I hear Only the Good Die Young, Moral Wasteland. I mean, it's yeah, it's not fucking 2,000,000 miles away. You know what I mean?
Funny, isn't it, how much like the bands like that get overlooked in the whole because so many thrash bands have reformed. The few bands that didn't get to reform ever, like Holy Terror and stuff, they nearly have slipped through the kind of cracks of where their place was at that stage. They were quite a popular band.
I mean, I remember. I'm not sure if I ever said this in any modern interview or anything online, but about 20 must be. Let me think. 20 something years ago, there was a Holy Terror website. Remember them old crappy kind of like websites? And I got hold of Kurt Kilfeld's email. Must be 2003, 4, 5, and I got his address and I sent him all Primordial CDs and I said, "This is my favorite band. Have at it. These are all," and blah blah. And I do remember an email conversation where there was a reformation. The bass player of High on Fire, Jeff, who's a fucking sweet gentleman, lovely dude. He played the bass for this Holy Terror one-off 40-minute ill-fated reunion with a singer of an Iron Maiden covers band who only did the first 2 albums instead of 15, and it was playing in a room to no one. This is what I heard anyway. And I talked with emailed Kurt Kilfeld a bit about just Holy Terror stuff, and he said, "Oh, if I wrote some new music," and now my memory might not be exact on this, but I'm sure the email is somewhere in my old Hotmail, talking about, "Oh, well, maybe you could be interested in singing, maybe if there was a demo of a new song or something." And I was just like, I remember reading that going, holy shit, really? And then I thought about it and went, no, I couldn't do that. 2003 or 4, maybe 4 or 5. So certainly I wouldn't have had the gumption to go, yeah, I could sing Holy Terror. Whereas now, of course, I would go, yeah, I'll do it.
Give it a go. So I think the other guitar player set up his own band called Mind Wars, didn't he?
Mike Alvord, yeah, he did. And fair play to him for having a go, but hard to do that without a singer. I mean, hard to do.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you really need the 2 guys. It's the reason why that band worked was there was 2 guitar players who were both really good and good songwriters. It's the same as Metal Church, when they got back together without the guy Craig Wells. The songwriting was just not the same,
I mean, for a band like Holy Terror, you need a killer drummer, like a killer, not just good, killer, and which is not hard to find a great drummer these days. But you need that twin guitar thing. But the other killer app that Holy Terror had, way above everyone else, was the best singer in thrash metal. I mean, you know, in my opinion, like you can't touch him. You know,
Very individual.
There's no doubt I could sing Distant Calling somewhere on for Primordial. 3 albums ago, we did a cover of Distant Calling in the rehearsal room. Me and Mick and Simon, the drummer, no bass, and Kieran wasn't there, and the three of us did it, and I sang it. And somewhere in the files on the computer, I have the drum tracks, and I keep going, Mick, we're going to make this and give them money for the streaming to answer charity or something I had in my head, blah blah. And I still have the drum tricks. I was only looking from the other day, and I was going, Mick, will you do the guitar? And blah blah. And I could get maybe Kirk Hillfeld to do the guitar. It's still like a brain worm that I need to process. Yeah, you can do the bass, but no, it's no. I mean, you know, I did a podcast only about how that album Mind War, saying it was my favorite heavy metal album of all time, and I still stand by that. And it's been my favorite since '89, since I got it for Christmas '88 from my uncle, and I never ever stopped listening to it. Like it's my most played record of all time, above.
Same copy still on vinyl, is it? Or have you worn through? Let me get a beer.
Yeah, do it. I'll keep talking to the public at large. Yeah, I have 2 copies on vinyl. One is almost worn through. I must have been played 500 plus times, and then another version of vinyl, a new picture disc, blah 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 blah. But it's the most played record in my entire collection. What has Joe got on his wall? I mean, to the unsuspecting hunter, it looks like they look like vinyls, but they're not. They're sort of shields of his clan. Are they clannish shields on the wall?
These are like wooden sculptures of like, I know, deers or whatever.
Okay, well, that's, you know, that sorts out that mystery for the 200 people who will watch us. But no, it's I mean, let me ask you this. Well, okay, there's a relevant question here, because when you were asked to do the bass for Agent Steel, was there a part of you that was like, oh, I have to do this? Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah. Because everyone thinks they know best, you know? It's like, I know what I'm going to be able to do, something that the last 17 bass players haven't been able to do, you know? But, you know, I think at the same time, like, you're enough of a fan to sort of know when to say no, kind of thing, you know? So whatever they were going to do, keep it true and do some gigs around keep it true.
Sorry, I am listening. I'm trying to set up another one of these stupid Zoom things, but of course I haven't got my glasses on. So
but basically, the gist was that they didn't want to rehearse.
No, okay. I framed the question wrong. Would you? Okay, maybe it's different, because for a singer, you're going to be like, let's say hypothetically, for me. Sorry, I'm sending you another invite. Let's say hypothetically, like Holy Terror Mind Wars is my favorite album of all time, right? And so for hypothetically, somebody to go, hey, would you sing on a new demo? And hey, could you imagine standing on a stage at Keep It True and singing Christian Resistance? Like 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, that would blow my fucking, I couldn't even process it. Now I would do it. But at the same time, I would tread so carefully, because
yeah, totally. And like you would have a minimum requirement of how seriously you would want the other people to take it, correct? Because you take it so seriously, right?
But it has to be deathly serious. But the thing is that now, having sang for an extra 15, 20 years, I know I could do it ish. But it still would come with a very great like weight of moral responsibility that I would really need to fucking think heavily about. But is there a band that someone could say to you, hey, you want to join in the bass? And you might go, fuck, I might ruin my favorite band, or ruin my, do you know what I mean, everyone else's myth and nostalgia about it. Do you know what I mean?
But I think a lot of the bands that I would probably like stuff like Agent Steel or Reanimator, or people have talked to about stuff like that, it's always been more of a kind of case of being all like, this ship is sinking, can you help us sort this out, please? Or whatever. It's never been kind of that scenario, you know?
Okay, well, let's be a bit more romantic and magical about it, in the sense that we're not asking you to right the ship. We're not asking you to save us. Something where somebody goes, hey, Flotsam and Jetsam. And somebody said, we're going to do Doomsday for Deceiver. And you were like, oh, fuck, because that's some heavy duty basing right there.
I would love it. Yeah, I would totally love to do that, you know?
It's a fucking head-on challenge to do something that fucking, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But it'd be the same, like, right, so say if someone asked you, did you want to sing on the next Riot album? You would have a very specific idea of what Riot you would want it to be like, right? You would not want them to be making, is there one called like Pantheons of Power or Nightbreaker? You know, those sort of before they did Industry, you know?
Privilege of Power. Privilege of Power, I don't really understand. It's got trumpets on it. But I know, I mean, well, yeah, Inishmore, I love Inishmore. He's a brilliant singer. Whatever that guy is, shout out to him.
Yeah, but you know the ones before that, like Nightbreaker with the picture of the shark on it, you wouldn't really want to make one of those records. And I think that's the thing with Jarvis. Like, you know, Jarvis is obviously in there making the Circa Thungal album that he wants to make, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being all like, they were like, hey, let's make one that sounds a bit like Slipknot or whatever. You know what?
Well, I'll tell you what,
like,
I mean, you know? Jarvis, Howard and wherever, said to me that they came up with riffs and he sifted through them, but these are actually pretty good. But I had that conversation with Tim from Circa Thungal when I heard they were going to reform, and my first question was, dude, can you still sing like that? And he's like, yeah. And I went, okay, don't take this the wrong way, but please, if you have a 17-year-old daughter who likes Black Label Society and Pantera, don't let her dress you up in Affliction t-shirt clothing. Please, just the shades and the black shirt. But don't do 1983. Don't pull on the leopard skin spandex and don't be mutton dressed as
some people can, like, you know, I'm sure you've seen Destructor, like they dressed like 1985, and their son was the singer's son was doing merch, and he was dressed in exactly the same gear with like dog collar and stuff on.
I saw a Destructor at Wacken with the Niflheim twins, and just fucking, you know, freaking out to Destructor, and then afterwards in the backstage, the guy with the little tiny Destructor logo, with the main guy, what's his name?
Yeah, I want to say Dave Destructor, but it's not. Yeah, it's Dave Holocaust, the guy who got killed.
His name is Dave Overkill. He smashed a keyboard with a hammer.
That's the sort of thing that you want to see, isn't it?
Well, they have an album called Forever in Leather, which I'm quite a fan of. But I mean, Maximum Destruction is one of the greatest speed metal albums.
Now, is it a Metal Blade record? Is it?
No, I'll tell you, it's I'm looking at it now.
Black Dragon or something like that, probably, is it?
No, it's fucking something weird, man, because they deserve to be bigger.
They seem to be the sort of band that you would have thought, you know, did European tours and stuff, but I think it seemed to be just over as soon as it, you know, started kind of thing, you know.
Well, Maximum Destruction is 85, right? Then they have an album called Demo in 88, Decibel Casualties. Yeah, they obviously got dropped by the label. Let's have a look at who the fuck made Auburn Records. Who the fuck is that?
That'll be the name of the road that the singer lives on.
Yeah, Auburn Road. But I mean, every song is a banger. Pounding Evil, Take Command, Destructor, the Iron Curtain, Iron. The last two songs, Hot Wet Leather and Bondage. Bit creepy. Can do without them. But this is 85. Yeah, November 85. So Chicago, right? Destructor, Maximum Destruction. Anybody doesn't know that, you will hear, I think, where Midnight and stuff got quite a bit of influence. I mean, it's wild speed metal.
But like it's much more under control than a lot of the other like German or Brazilian speed metal and stuff.
It's got a much
better, play it properly, you know.
It's got a much tighter drummer, than the first, say, Infernal Overkill or something. But it's a brilliant record. It's a fucking, for me, top 10 speed metal ever.
Yeah, and to be honest, it gets bunched in with things like Iron Angel and stuff, and Angel Dust Too Much, and it's much better than those records.
Way better than Iron Angel. I mean, I'm a Hellish Crossfire fan, of course. I mean, who the fuck isn't? But no, Destructor's way better. I think, you know.
I'm gonna go and see them at Defenders of the Old Fest. Like, where the fuck do they get the shit names for these things? In Brooklyn, but it was like Riot, and Riot had female backing singers on stage, and
I saw
Exciter and Reunion and a couple other good bands.
We played with Riot in 1980 or 1998, And I knew, okay, you couldn't, in the 80s, you couldn't buy a copy of, Fire Down Under. You just couldn't buy a copy of Fire Down Under. But I bought Thunder of Steel in 88 or 89, and I bought Privilege of Power when it came out. And I had a couple of Riot albums, but you couldn't get a copy, an old vinyl copy.
Well, riddle me this though, man, because that album was a huge record in the UK, wasn't it?
Thunder Steel or Privilege of Power?
No. Fire Down Under.
Yeah, sure, but it's 80. So by 88, when I bought Thunder Steel and I started to get into Riot, I only bought it because Metal Forces actually reviewed Thunder Steel and called it like Speed Metal Symphony or something ridiculous, and I was just like, well, that sounds like what I want to hear. And so I bought it, loved it, then bought Privilege of Power and went, when it came out in 90. But in 88, trying to just buy a copy of Fire Down Under was impossible because it was on probably a huge record label from 80 who hadn't pressed it in like 5-6 years. You couldn't get Restless Breed or Narita. They were like impossible things, and I didn't know any. I didn't know any metal people to trade them with. So I didn't hear Fire Down Under.
They opened the big Motorhead show, the heavy metal barn dance or whatever, in Maida Vale football stadium.
Really? What year is
that? Right, with the opening band, and I think that they did other UK tours around then where they were like. They had a name for themselves in the UK, or maybe their albums were charting in the top 40 or something. But somehow it went from that to by 1983 just completely gone. Like,
well, Riot are a weird band. I mean, I've digged into a bit into them, and they supported like Aerosmith in 78, 79, like their first album Made in America and the first EP. I mean, it's all ready to go, and like Fire Down Under, Narita. What's the other fucking record? They're just there. I could go look at them, but I won't.
Restless Breed?
No, Restless Breed is 83, 84. Well, hang on a second. Talk amongst yourselves. This is a bad idea.
In case anyone at home is wondering, this is Alan's stage backdrop for Primordial here.
Yeah.
Hiding all his nerdish books.
Hang on. Here he comes. Well, I mean, this is not all of them. They're just the ones off the top of the thing. But we have, I mean, look at this for a fucking Riot, Born in America. Look at that for a fucking cover.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
It is. That's exactly what it is. It says, fuck you to design, doesn't it?
But who designed the little seal? It's like a little sumo fat baby with a seal's head.
I get the feeling, though, that see the thing that's on the front, the picture? Yeah. It's like, it's a badge or something like that, or a patch that they got made up, and they're like, let's just put the patch design on the cover of the record.
That's the flag the wrong way up, isn't it? I could be killed for that. There we go. Oh. Well, this is the first album, isn't it? It's 77. I can't fucking read it. I'm putting on my glasses to read that. That's Restless Breed.
Awful album cover.
Right, Live.
Haven't seen that one.
It's
awful album cover.
Yeah, it's not great. Narita. I mean, Rock City. That's the one I was trying to fucking think of. Rock City is I mean, this is a fucking brilliant record. Desperation Warrior.
Yeah.
Tokyo Rose Chips. Oh.
Is Road Racing on that one as well, isn't it?
No, Road Racing is on side one of No. I don't know. I can't see. Anyway.
We don't know.
Listen, that's not going to be any good in a podcast, is it? Me just looking at Riot records. But they're one of the most. I mean, they are one of the most underrated. I mean, they enjoyed a resurgence the last 20 years, which they thoroughly deserve. How good is Fire Down Under? It must be there somewhere, Fire Down Under. But Fire Down Under is
very good.
For 80, it's one of the greatest it's not really new version of heavy metal because it's got a bit more rock and roll stuff in it, but maybe it's new wave of American heavy metal. It must be one of the first.
It's kind of like AC/DC influenced. It sounds like, a wee bit like the If You Want Blood live album on 45,
It reminds me of
got more hop about it.
It's got the same fuck you as Rose Tattoo sometimes.
Yep. But I think like all those bands, man, they got all overswept. It's the same as like, you know, your Anvils or Ravens or even Armored Saint, where like people were expecting something heavier or lighter. So the middle porridge was not good enough anymore. You know?
Interesting. There's a brilliant YouTube footage of like Riot live at my father's place or something, Long Island, 81.
Yeah.
Fucking hell, Speranza is off the charts. They're on fire. But those three albums, Narita, Rock City, and Fire Down Under, are a triumvirate of three of the greatest proto heavy metal rock records.
I think it's worth talking about bands like this, or like even Armored Saint, or a lot of those bands that was whenever they got onto major labels, they were being paid retainers of some description. So the label and the management were paying their rent and paying for the rehearsal place, and then firing them a couple of $100 a week. So they were never in a situation once they'd signed the major deal of saying, let's go back in a van and try and conquer the tri-state area. You know, they were like, now that we're in this position, we want it to be big or nothing, you know.
But do you think so? Like, I mean, a band like Riot feels so synonymous with just being American to me. And I wonder in 83 or 84 or 82, did they ever even get to Europe to play?
Yeah, they did. They were definitely, if you look it up, or I'll find some stuff and send you on, they definitely did tours with people like Saxon in the UK around 1981. And
but in Europe, but in mainland Europe, did they create a European sort of Central European fan base, you know?
It's hard to tell, really, isn't it? Because if you think about it, at that stage, Europe, they weren't really big into importing metal at all. Like, obviously, they had Maiden and a couple of other British bands that were very big. But like a lot of the stuff that the Germans and the people in the Benelux and France were getting excited about was their own music around then, you know? Like all the German bands like Accept and stuff like that.
Accept, of course,
you know, Trust in France and stuff, you know?
People forget how huge Accept were. Accept were selling millions of records. I mean, Accept by 79 to 86 had probably sold 15, 20 million records. I mean, they're massive, you know, way, way bigger than a Riot or a Twisted Sister even were in Europe. You know what I mean? People forget.
I don't think Twisted Sister, it was really as big a deal, because if you look at the posters, whenever Metallica came over to record Ride the Lightning, they did a bunch of shows with Twisted Sister in like May of 1984, and they were headlining above Twisted Sister, and that was after I Wanna Rock came out.
I have a funny Twisted Sister story. Primordial won an award from Metal Hammer, UK. Must be 10 years ago. Maybe 8-9 years ago. And we won like best underground band or something. And you know, it was like red carpet in the something big venue, blah blah blah, whatever. And just all these like Dee Schneider and that's like Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper gave me my award, which I gave away within an hour and a half to the Crowbar to just put on the gin shelf. It was like a sword and a thing, and I was like, I'm not, you know, what am I going to do with this? When are they going to get it on a plane?
You could show it at your local Extravision and demand free rentals. So you could.
I just went, stick it on the shelf. Anyway, so we were, and I don't remember who I was with, maybe Steve Hughes, comedian Steve Hughes, and we were just like, you know, just bumping around, sort of knocking around, you know, just being odd and sort of whatever. And I was on this red carpet thing with all these, you know, Scuzz TV kind of people, or whoever was out doing these TV things, interviewing people. And the guy in front of me was the bass player of Twisted Sister. So that's like, not Marco Mendoza, but the guy with the
I think his name might have been Mark the Beast Mendoza or something.
Mark the Beast Mendoza was in front of me, double denimed, and he had a painted on beard.
Nice.
It was so fucking weird. And I was standing like sort of too close to him, just like, just staring at his little beard, or rather big beard, but it was drawn on with pen. And we were just like, and there's somewhere from some camera angle, you can see us, me and my mate, standing behind him while he's been interviewed, just going, I don't know, with our stupid fat faces. And then we get up to the girl, the next thing, like we're in this queue to come round to the wherever, and she just looks at me and goes, are you happy for your award, blah blah? I was like, nah, whatever. And I went, she just goes literally was like, who's this? To the lad inside, I went, You don't. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
Never mind.
Don't fucking worry about it. I'll get out of the way and you can talk to, I don't know, whoever is after me. And just me and whoever it was just stood there going, oh, I don't know. And she was just like, I know, but I got up really close to see Marco. It was like a drawn on with like a sort of stylus pencil or something, like a graphite pencil. And it was completely fake. And he had huge sunglasses on and he was double denimed up. And he had like, I'm not sure. They look like fake tattoos. Maybe I've made that up. I'm not sure in my memory, but he surely had a penciled on beard. And I was just way too close to be just, you have to stand 3
yards. This far away from him.
Anyway, yeah, but they played 3 songs and they just annihilated everybody. Buck Cherry.
I'll give you 50 quid if he doesn't have a side project band called The Beast.
But didn't he play in the Rods for a while, or didn't he play a few bands before the Rods?
That would make sense if he was in the Rods, really, because that was just funny enough. They played at that Defenders of the Old Fest as well. Carl Candy, the producer guy. And yeah, they were like, what's their album called? Is it like Here Comes the Dogs or something?
Let the meat metal.
Yeah.
Girl with the banana with the dildo thing. It's a good record. I mean, but just it's an album that could have stood the test of time if the artwork and the aesthetic was different. But modern, mustachio, Swedish high cheekbone fellas are just not gravitating towards the Rods. They're gonna like other things, Exciter. The Rods.
But you would imagine that all the people who listen to like Anvil listen to the Rods, right?
Who are those
or Tyson Dog. If you like Tyson Dog, you're going to be into the Rods.
Tyson Dog. Wow, yeah. Fear of the Dog. I like that. I quite like that Tyson Dog album. I'm thinking
kind of priesty, isn't it? It's surprisingly priesty in places, like,
Yeah. They have a riff. I ripped off the riff for a Dread Sovereign song. Just lifted the riff completely. It's off Beware of the Dog. I was quite a fan of that record.
You could be getting a copyright strike from Neat Records. Isn't something, man, that Al Qaeda are giving people copyright strikes on YouTube for sharing their beheading videos? Like, such an insane idea that you're just all like, now that our work is done, let's go around policing the copyright on it, like,
Yeah. I'm not sure where we go with that as an observation. Should we get back to no presents for Christmas?
Is there any other heavy metal Christmas material that is even worth mentioning? Like, there's the Twisted Sister Christmas record.
How could there be? I mean, what could it be?
So there's like a compilation of covers, because there's one where like Jeff Tate sings Silver Bells, and it's really good.
But like every record I ever found, which was like a Christmas record, always had Paul Di'Anno singing on like half of the songs, and it was like on some overdose records from like Birmingham or something.
That's where Jeff Scott Soto and Dave Ellison are walking hand in hand into the future of Christmas records, Easter records, St. Patrick's Day records, Liberty Day record, whatever.
Jeff, I was quite chuffed. We played it with Wet, WET. Primordial on the other stage before them at some festival, and Jeff Scott Soto, as I walked across the thing, went, "Cool vocals, man." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much, sir." Like, wow, okay.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
you should ask him if he needs a bass player.
Yeah, that's could be.
You're fired, Dave Ellison, because you can always undercut him. Like if Dave Ellison's charging $100 a gig, you could charge 75.
Tell me this, what is the reasoning behind calling their band Kings of Thrash? Because I watched them and they sound actually fucking great. I mean, Chris Poland is killing it. Jeff Young is cool. I mean, watching them,
Jeff Young's like rhythm guitar playing isn't great. Like, his rhythm guitar playing kind of sounds choppy in places.
But the singer guy is covered him.
He's good.
And I was watching them, or actually I was listening to them, and I mean, Rattlehead sounded great. Into the Lungs of Hell, blah, blah. But why call this band Kings of Thrash? Why not call them Rattleheads or something like this. You know what I mean? That reference is Megadeth.
It sort of feels like, you know, whenever Death to All, wasn't it originally called something else?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. Like, it sort of feels like they should probably have spent another year or so in the rehearsal room learning all the stuff. I mean, so that they could have come out with like a really good brand. But yeah, it seems like just, you know, they need money now, so let's do it now.
They do sound, I mean, look, they do sound great. And if they played down the road in the Point, I'd be fucking, they're going to play like Killing Is My Business and fucking whatever.
Yeah, you know? Mary Jane, that sounds great.
I'll tell you something funny about Death to All. I went to the first Death to All show in Dublin, which is, for anybody who doesn't know, that's the, you know, Death, Gene Hoglan and blah, 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 and Sean Masvidal and whatever. And the young fella who plays the exact same BC Rich with the same kind of hair and the same face, almost the same voice, not quite as brutal as Chuck, but he's just Chuck. And I was in the toilet about 3/4 in having a piss, and these two old hits Dublin, death metal lads from 1990, who obviously had been out of the scene for like 30 fucking years, and they were like, fucking hell, Chuck is looking all right. What fucking age is Chuck now? I was having a piss, and the other fellow was like, I don't know, he must be like 50 or something, 50 odd, 50. He looks still the fucking same. They didn't even know.
But you know what, man, to be fair,
it's fucking amazing.
Like one of the only times that Death had played in Ireland, they'd done it without him, hadn't it? So,
well, I saw Death.
Maybe they saw it without Chuck, and they were like, "Meh, you know, maybe it's okay if he's not there," sort of thing, you know.
No, they did it. They thought it was Chuck. I saw Death in 1990 with Creator, and I saw them in 92 for Human with Chuck.
Yep.
And Chuck, the first gig, Chuck just decided not to go at the last moment. So the drum roadie sang, and they played songs from the first album. It was rubbish. And then the second one, they arrived late to Dublin. Chuck wore a Blondie shirt or some sort of shirt like this, stared out over the crowd, didn't say a thing. And we met him afterwards, and we're like, he came out with like a white towel on and blah, blah. And McGonagall's was not like, hey, let's go and hang out kind of place. And we're all hanging out. We're talking to him, and he was just like, yeah, man, you know, just really shitting on all the death metal bands that we like, the Immolation and stuff. And then this girl came up to him and went, you didn't play a long enough set, blah, blah. You fucking disgrace, we pay our money, blah, blah. And he just went, bitch, change your tampon. What the fuck?
Sort of ended on the perfect note there, really, didn't it? It's hard to hard to bet on that.
I was in the middle of saying something really stupid. What was I talking about?
You said that Chuck Schuldiner said, bitch, change your tampon.
He went, bitch, change your tampon to my friend. And we all went, huh? Like, even in 92, even in 92, we were like, wow, that's kind of not on. That's not particularly, and it was super like, I was like, okay.
Well, you know, like he had that rep for just being extremely difficult, didn't he? Like so.
Yeah. He had a few reps, but that was one of them, that's for sure. But anyway, Death were, it was weird because it was 92, so it was like, you know, like rainbow, not sort of, you know, tie-dyed t-shirts, billowing sort of kaftani pants and headless guitars. Yep. And by that stage, I was like, I love Human. I think Human is a great record, symbolic. And
record.
Yeah, they're brilliant record. They're undeniably brilliant. It's just the Death I saw in 92. I waited a long time to see them, and the Death I saw in 1990 wasn't Death. And so I wanted to see...
Yeah, 80s Death.
Well, I wanted to see death metal. I certainly didn't want... But then again, it's 92. But they were still brilliant. I mean, look, they were brilliant. You know?
This is such a weird story, like all these bands we're talking about. Like, you know, that Fabulous Disaster European tour in Europe that had a Nuclear Assault opening, and the original opening band was... what it's called, Holy Terror, and then Holy Terror got kicked off the tour, and then Reanimator, who hadn't even brought out like a single yet or anything, who just did the demo, went and did the rest of the European tour, but it was supposed to be Death. Like there's posters there that have Death as the opening band, which would have been way better. That would have been like a proper start to their career, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Death played in Europe in 88, 89. I mean, I have a couple of bootlegs there. I mean, they did play for Leprosy and stuff. I'm not sure if thrash metal was quite where Death was ready for touring yet. You know what I mean? I mean, death metal had only really just started to tour. I think that your average, I mean, certainly in '89, I remember your average thrash fan who liked Testament. The battle lines were drawn, and on the other side of it was like Leprosy, Slowly We Rot, Severed Survival, and they just fucking thrashers hated it. It was just too brutal.
I think the thing is, though, like all those death metal bands, you know, the Florida bands and stuff, they didn't really have an opening to go out on tour with thrash bands, or
Thrash
like
fans,
it wasn't really until
didn't.
some of those bands like Death started doing their own tours that they could bring out other bands like Bolt Thrower, or you know,
Well, the
like
thrash
Never
bands.
Death.
I mean, there was a big. I don't know if it was a podcast or a thing I listened to about it, which was like the thrash bands who were popular in the '80s never brought out the death metal bands. They just never brought them out. Like Obituary, as I understand it, Obituary The End Complete is the biggest selling death metal record of all time, and it sits at about just under 600,000 physical copies, 580.
I would have thought surely there would be a Carcass record that would have sold
No,
more, like one of the Earache ones. No,
no,
they're
none
not
of
licensed to Sony Records, you know.
them and Cathedral and a lot of other bands were, but they didn't shift the right numbers and they got dropped. I mean, they still probably sold 200,000, 250,000.
But then
Whatever.
you would now say also, you would probably say, would you say someone like Gojira, is that death metal? Like, is there a modern
Oh, okay.
band
Yeah.
who you would
Oh,
probably
yeah.
consider death metal, really, who are probably
Yeah. I'm not a,
selling millions of
I'm not a,
records?
I don't mind Gojira at all, but I'm talking specifically about the moment between '89 and '93 where
Yeah.
death metal was like super ascendant. You know, Covenant did, I think, 250, 300,000, 350,000 copies. But whatever happened, Cause of Death End Complete, as I understand it, someone may hit me up in the comments and go, "You're fucking full of shit." But as I understand it, from like digging deep into Wikipedia and digging deep into physical sales, Obituary had the biggest selling death metal record of all time at 500,000 copies, and they were never brought out by Slayer, or never brought out by, you know, none of the heavy metal bands brought out the thrash bands. You know, in a sense, Slayer, Megadeth, you know, Wasp brought out Slayer, Megadeth brought it by Alice Cooper, Anthrax were brought out by whoever. I don't know, Metallica was Aussie. Who the fuck Anthrax
It's
brought out?
worth saying though, like all those things were all major label decisions. You know,
Yeah,
like Megadeth weren't brought out by Alice Cooper because he liked them. It was because he needed
sure.
someone to help fill the arenas, and you know, Capitol Records were willing to give him 100 grand or whatever for the
Sure.
privilege.
But isn't it odd though? I mean, think of how big Sepultura is getting in '91, '92, that they're not on the Slayer tour.
But
Slayer just
look
like,
at it this
nah.
way, though. Like, were Sepultura, like, right, they were probably arguably the biggest out of all the extreme bands in the early 90s. But were any of those bands ever in a situation where they had label support where someone was willing to give them 50 grand?
I think so for sure. I mean, Sepultura. Oh yeah, for Sepultura, like Roots is a bigger selling record than Divine Intervention, I would say, than the Slayer record of
Well,
the
yeah,
time.
I would definitely say so. But the problem that they have is that by the time the Arise tour happened in Europe, they were playing places and selling them out just as much as Slayer were. Like
Yeah, of
Slayer weren't
course.
playing arenas in Europe. Slayer were playing
What I'm just trying
2,000,
to say,
3,000 seaters, you know?
what I'm just trying to say is that there never seemed to be a reciprocal moment where the thrash scene went, all right, we'll bring out death metal. It just
Yeah.
never seemed to happen. There never seemed to be Slayer supported by Morbid Angel in '90.
No.
However, that never materialized, even though death metal was racking up huge sales. And people think Slayer sold tons of records. Slayer never sold tons of records. I mean,
No,
the
they're a
biggest
band
selling,
like Motorhead and the Ramones, where
yeah,
all their records, or like even like Bob Dylan, like you know, he has tons of albums that haven't sold a million copies.
yeah,
The same with Slayer have
Nick
tons
Cave
of
as
albums that
well.
haven't sold a million copies.
Nick Cave is the same. I mean,
Yeah.
the biggest selling Slayer record is probably Seasons of the Abyss. It probably sits at like 2.2 million. But I mean,
I don't know about that because there's a bit in, you know, the Megadeth Clash of the Titans from the Vaults video. And the guys in Megadeth are slagging off Slayer for never having sold more than a million copies of any
oh,
of their
I mean, Megadeth. I mean, the biggest selling Megadeth is Countdown to Extinction. It must be 3.6 million, 3.5 million.
Yeah.
So Megadeth is way bigger than Slayer, as in by a million copies of their biggest album, I think.
Yeah.
But Slayer consistently sold of everything. They never, whereas Megadeth, for example, went from being a stadium band all of a sudden to playing in front of 1,500, 1,400 people. Slayer was still Slayer, just like the Ramones, just like, I don't know, Morrissey, or just like their name carried them on further than everybody else, you know? I'm sure if you looked at Judas Priest sales in 1984, they were nothing compared to Dokken. I'm sure Dokken sold more records in 1985 than Judas Priest did. I'm sure they did. Well, Judas Priest's biggest selling record. Well, hang on. Judas Priest's biggest selling record is, isn't it, Defenders of the Faith, and it only sits at 2.1 million, 2.2 million. And I'm pretty sure the Under Lock and Key did more copies than that.
I couldn't imagine so. I tell you why is like, and I think this is a shrewd maneuver, but like Dokken, I don't think ever did a headline tour in America ever. Like every single tour they did.
Maybe not. But what I'm trying to, I mean, I looked into, me and Paul Kearns, Arcane Sun fame, are super statistic, like nerd number heads. We just super got into only number stuff, and I looked into Priest. Don't get me wrong, Priest have sold, like, whatever it is, 41 million records, 38 million records.
Yeah.
But they don't have a 5 million smash hit. They don't have.
Well, I would say that British Steel has probably sold 5 or 6 million, but I would say all the rest of them sold a million or two. But their thing is that they were able to play arenas in America.
No, they were. But they're
consistently,
they have no album that's 5 million. None. They have a lot of albums that are 1.5 to 2.8 and 3. Defenders of the Faith is the biggest record. That's the biggest Judas Priest selling record.
I think it's their best album, so I would say that that's well deserved.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's a weird thing. Like, Priest could sell out stadiums, and like by Ram It Down, they could still do big places. But
they brought out Surf that tour, didn't they?
Yeah, but Ram It Down is not a big selling record. But the point is that, like, if you look at the sales, for example, I would say of Defenders of the Faith, let's say it's 2.4 million. I would say Dokken, Under Lock and Key is a bigger selling physical record.
But see, I would say that you're only saying that because you love that record, you know. And I like it too, but I don't think that, apart from them having some videos around that stage that were popular, I don't.
Well, okay, well, all right. Let's say this, it's equal at least. I mean, I think that Under Lock and Key is at least 2 million copies selling records. Priest don't have a huge record, just like Iron Maiden. Iron Maiden don't have a smash hit like an 8 million record. They don't have that. They've tons and tons of.
I think Live After Death is like over 4 million, isn't it? And Number of the Beast is like 3 or 4 million.
Live After Death might be, well, not really. I mean, I looked into all this stuff, and like Maiden have a ton of records between, let's say, 2 and 6, but they don't have like an 8, 9. The Iron Maiden don't have a 10 million copy record. They don't have a 10 million copy. They don't have many 6s or 7s. They have loads and loads of 4s and 3s and 2s. Priest are smaller than Maiden, and they have lots and lots of 1 to 2.5s. But like Quiet Riot, Metal Health sold 8, 9 million copies. Like Quiet Riot, Metal Health is.
Yeah, but that was, see, I think the thing is
that's a bigger selling record than every Iron Maiden record ever.
But people forget how important that album was, and the first Rat album, you know, and like it's important to remember that was the scene that the other LA bands like WASP and Armored Saint were born into, you know, so there was an expectation for those bands to immediately follow into the same kind of stratospheric.
Well, I mean, I remember reading a thing which said that by the time The Last Command came out, the first WASP had sold almost 2 million. Now,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Armored Saint are not even in the conversation, I think, of that many record sales. But if we're talking about Cinderella, we're talking about WASP, we're talking about, these are bands who are selling, I mean, first couple of Rat albums, I would imagine that Out of the Cellar has probably sold more copies than the biggest Judas Priest record.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you about that. But I think it's just important, like the Quiet Riot and the Rat records were both the first ones ever to reach #1 in the American Billboard ever, you know. So it really did herald the start of like the 80s becoming heavy metal central, really, you know.
I mean, even if you look at Black Sabbath, and Black Sabbath have sold what, 60 million records or something. The last time I looked and checked all the stuff up, And there aren't. I mean, there's lots of albums that are 1, 2, 3 million, but there isn't a 7 million banger. I mean, Van Halen sold more of their first album than Black Sabbath did of any record.
I will believe it, but the Americans have a special relationship, with bands like that, or because I was reading something where someone was talking. It was Steve Tyler from Aerosmith was giving off about Metallica, saying all their songs sound the same or whatever. And someone in the comments was like, "Oh, what a pile of bollocks! Like, Aerosmith is a much smaller band than Metallica." And the guy replied, being all like, "No, Aerosmith has sold more records than Metallica." And I was like, "That cannot be true," and looked it up, and it was true.
Yeah, I mean,
Just to
Metallica
show you how
about
powerful America is like that. Like a band like Van Halen or them can just fucking your entire career, like journey, can be based in America.
Well, I mean, the last time I looked up all this stuff was maybe 10 years ago, and I realized Scorpions had sold. Now, these are things in my head from 10, 15 years ago. Scorpions were on 105 million records. Status Quo was on over 100 million records.
Yep.
And that was at the time bigger than Metallica. Now, Metallica have since hit 105 or 110. But if Status Quo of 100, 105 million, I mean, that's bigger than Judas Priest. Judas Priest have done 35, 40 million records, maybe 40 million. I mean, Quo has sold more records than Priest. Scorpions.
Quo is better. Like, Quo is so much more like commercial music, man.
Quo never got big in the USA, but certainly
they didn't need to, like, that's the kind of thing. Like, it's surprising that DC did as well, because whenever Quo tried it over there, they were like, "We do not need to import boogie rock. We have plenty of Blackfoot style bands here. We do not need more."
Montrose and stuff. Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. Like, I super nerded out over all these details. I like Megadeth has sold more records than Slayer. Anthrax has sold less than Slayer, but Metallica is so much bigger. It's fucking stupidly much.
I think Mustaine said that, didn't he? He was like the big one and the little three.
Yeah. But also the bands that you don't think have sold many records, and then you look and you go, "Holy shit, Uriah Heep have sold 40 million records." Or
like Love Hurts and stuff like that. They had some big hits in the 70s, didn't they? So
Nazareth or whatever,
buying records, like
Yeah, Nazareth and lots of stuff like Van Halen or Boston have 2 records that are over 15 million. Yep. Def Leppard have Pyromania is 20-something million. Hysteria.
See, that's the thing, isn't it? That's the actual second British invasion. Is the actual second British invasion is like, even though Iron Maiden, we like to think of them conquering America and stuff like that.
Is way
it's not the same kind of deal as like bands like Def Leppard, Duran, Tears for Fears, where they were going and selling, as you said, 15 million records,
Whitesnake, 1987. Yeah, I mean, Def Leppard have, I mean, Pyromania, I think, is 20-something million, 21, 22. And I think Hysteria is 40, 35, 37 million. I mean, and the biggest
it goes to show how much, like, understanding that market was really, really important. Like, and that's why they needed Mutt Lange, and they needed, like, Elektra Records and Q Prime Management, because all those people understood what America wanted to hear.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that Iron Maiden. I mean, Iron Maiden. The thing about bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest is that their following was so rabid from year to year. They still kept on showing up to every stadium show, and they could do 4 nights at Long Beach Arena. You know what I mean? But there's every cunt who bought a record and followed them from beginning, because it was like Def Leppard had transient fans backing in and out every summer as there was hits and stuff. But like, Priest were not selling. I mean, maybe Twins of the Faith, Turbo probably did 2 million or something, but they're not in the same league as Van Halen or Boston or something. They're selling way more records, but Priest is still filling a 15,000 seat arena every fucking year, because it's the fans are heavy metal, fucking whatever you want to call it.
Like, and again, the culture of those times, man, is very important. Like, the heavy metal parking lot and stuff like that, and the event of going to an ice rink to go and see Judas Priest in Tempe, Arizona.
Yeah.
That's what people were doing, having barbecues in the back of their trucks. And like, as much as like, they were really glad that there was a cool band playing, they were probably going there the next week to go and see whatever. It was. But
they were still probably buying a shirt and a copy. The next week after they went out of the pre-show, they went, Do you know that band Dokken? I'm buying that under lock and key. And they were probably going like, yeah, hundreds of thousands of them. I don't see record sales are like a kind of, they're like a weird guarded secret. Let me look if I can see how many sales Lock and Key has sold. This is not great podcasting.
Shake 'em out would be the answer to that. It's funny, like I was reading in the Metallica, one of the books, about whenever they signed with Music for Nations on Elektra Records, that Neat Records were trying to sign them, and Bronze Records from the UK were trying to sign them as well.
Wait, start that sentence again. Wahoo?
Metallica. Whenever they were signing with Elektra Records and it was Vertigo, sorry, in the UK for
Elektra, that's it.
Yeah, for the Ride the Lightning kind of era. That Neat Records were trying to sign them, and Bronze Records were trying to sign them, and they did.
Hang on. Can I just interrupt you there? Under Lock and Key was certified platinum on April the 14th, 1987. So platinum is how many sales?
500,000, I think, isn't it? Or is that gold? The changed, isn't it?
I think gold
now
is...
said in the Irish charts, I think it's 10,000 streams is gold now or some bollocks.
Okay, but back in the day, I think gold is 500,000.
Right, and then platinum's 1 million. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, tell me here right now. Medicine sales, blah blah blah. Okay, no, a gold record is 500,000 units. A platinum record is 1 million.
Yeah. So
it was certified platinum in 1987, which is a year after release. So yeah, okay, I might be wrong. I might be sort of right. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure in the years after it went up to 1.6, 1.7, 1.8.
I think the readers of our fanzine would probably agree that you've been blinded by your Dokken love, like, you know.
Fuck,
got so close to having a whole episode where we didn't talk about Dokken too, and here we are.
Yeah, but well, you know, it's what can we do? It's such a... I wonder if WASP sold more records than Dokken.
Definitely.
Do you think so?
Yeah, well, sure. They have, like, WASP have a huge following in Europe. You know, Dokken don't have a following anywhere apart from in Tampa, Arizona.
But they fucked that themselves, though. Like, Dokken fucked that themselves, though. They could have.
But see, I think the thing is as well, they were signed to Q Prime Management, right?
But Dokken did tour Europe
for years, like, so. Obviously, what happened was by the time they did the Monsters of Rock cruise, and you know they were going to break up the band, Q Prime were like, well, you know, we've been trying to crack you for 5 years now, and it's not really going as well as we would like it to, so we're not going to try and stop you from breaking up.
According to Wikipedia, WASP's biggest selling album is The Last Command. I mean, Wild Child.
Yeah, Wild Child. Yeah, me and the missus were arguing about this one as well. Like,
okay,
I don't really like.
I'll settle it. I can settle these debates. I'm very good at settling debates between arguing couples.
Well, it's about WASP and what's the best WASP record. Like,
oh, okay. Well, the first one.
So I would say one's for contention. Obviously, first one.
Conversation over. First one.
I like Inside the Electric Circus is good. You can't include the live. What's the live one called? Live in the Raw.
Unlive in the Raw, yeah.
With the Ghoulies theme song.
Well, the thing about Unlive in the Raw, it has Harder, Faster, and it has Scream Until You Like It. It also has
9 to 5 Nasty and a couple other good ones.
It has a couple of songs that aren't on any album. Harder, Faster.
And The Manimal.
The Manimal is one of the greatest WASP songs ever made.
Women. I love the way they smell.
I love everything about them. I got my name, The Manimal. The Manimal is one of the greatest WASP songs ever, and it just got... Where did it go? Like, it's not on any record.
And like, speaking of, like, I looked at the set list for the upcoming tour, and it's got the dreaded word medley. There's like a medley of like 4 or 5 of the good songs from the 80s, but the set's like pretty short, man. It's like 13 songs or something like that.
Really? Does it have the Manimal in it?
No Manimal, no 9 to 5 Nasty, no Scream Till You Like It.
I mean, the Manimal, the song is fucking brilliant, but the vocals are just when you have a singer that good, you can just go boom, but doom, but do do do, and allow him to.
Well, that's why loads of the songs like Restless Gypsy work, because that's what they do in the
Yeah.
verse, or Wild Child. Whereas, like, whenever he's going mad, like, the verses.
But come on now. In fairness, Wild Child is maybe I think Wild Child is maybe the greatest rock song ever made, in a sense that it's the most perfect rock song on all levels. The lyrics, it's just perfect. I've never played that to a person who's never even listened to heavy metal, who hasn't gone, holy shit, all right, okay, what the fuck, okay, and the singing and everything. I mean, of course, you can take songs like Rebel in the FDG or Shoot from the Hip, which are just do 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 do, and you just go, hey, sing a cool thing over. Don't go 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 because when you're that good at singing, you can lift it. But Wild Child is, I mean, that's a riff. It's one of the most perfectly crafted rock songs. I mean,
It's good. It's a good song, definitely. For some reason, it always reminds me. It doesn't sound remotely like it, but it's one of those songs like "Youth Gone Wild" or "Love Gun" by Kiss, where you're like immediately, "Oh, this is amazing!" Like there's no like getting into the song. You're just immediately into the like, "Oh, cool."
What do you think of the new singer of Skid Row, the young fella? He's fucking killing
Good singer, man, but their album is total shite. Like I listened to it, and it's
I
fucking
did listen to it.
bollocks.
Is it bad?
Well, like it's just same as the last couple of records they brought out. A wee bit less. The last ones had like trying to sound nowadays, modern kind of touches, and it doesn't really have that. That Michael Wagner on board again for it, but
Because I
it
watched
was
them,
great.
I watched the footage of them live, and he's the lad from Heat.
Yeah,
I was in touch with him for a bit. He seemed like a really fucking good dude. Um, and he's killing it for them live, but they didn't. The record's bad, is it?
record's not great, man, and it hasn't. Nothing like that is ever going to add 500 people to the venue for them. So they're
But
always going to be stuck in that situation where,
if
like,
the record is killer, it could give them a little shovel up. You know what I mean?
it's happened. Like, man, Sepulture have had a bump up from their last couple of records because people are now more into the idea that all right, we'll go to the gig and it's not going to be just load of fucking
Okay, but
people hitting weird drums. Like,
let's talk about that in the realm of somewhere like Skid Row. I mean, if people go and see like kind of like say Tom Kiefer, Cinderella or something, but he brings out a killer record, like a proper killer underground sleeper hit record, people will go like, hey, you know what? Like say a good example is Europe. We were at the Europe show. Who the fuck would have given a shit really about Europe? But Europe made 2 or 3 great, really good records in the last 15 years in a row.
yeah, Walk the Surf and stuff.
And to the people who kind of saw beyond the hits from '86, there were people there who were like, "Oh, brilliant! They're playing songs from the new album." Skid Row could have done that and added to their not many, but let's say a couple of hundred to their crowd who went, "Holy shit! They made a great return record." By you saying it's shit.
Yeah, like it seems that whatever the songwriting mojo that was going on, if you think about it, it was only really going on from about 1986 to 1993 or whatever, and then after that, they haven't had a clue what they were doing. So
93? Would you even go to as far to 93?
yeah, well, I presume that there's like a couple of B-sides and stuff from Slave to the Grind that are good, but
What year is Slaves to Gone? 92? 91?
92, yeah.
92, okay.
So, but who knows? Like, it's just one of those eternal what ifs. What if Max had stayed with Sepulture? I think they probably would end up doing exactly the same thing that they did anyway. Making sort of more rubbish, derivative, kind of rootsy stuff. But then, like, I'm glad that they had a bit of a turnaround.
It's hard to say. I mean, I care. I'm more curious about the new Skid Row record, the new Sepultura record. I couldn't give a shit about Sepultura, but I'm curious as to the return of an old band. Like, how do they see their place in things anymore? What do they do? How do they think? Like, okay, how do we grasp hold of what's very well, it's a young person's music and try and reinvent it with some energy?
I think a lot of people they're coming at it from like someone like Blue Oyster Cult, where they were just annoyed by their fans for so long that they were like, right, we will go and make a new record for you. But didn't really go in like having an idea of what they would have to do or having an agenda of what they needed to do.
I think there are 2 great examples, but they're quite old, and that is Roy Z making Halford, Resurrection, and Chemical Wedding by Bruce Dickinson, which are, in my opinion, Resurrection is the best Priest record since '84, and Chemical Wedding is better than anything Iron Maiden has done since '88, almost. In that they're both brilliant records made by Roy Z in a year apart, and he just resurrected these middle-aged guys' career, not old guys, but middle-aged guys' career. Just went, Boof, I know how you should sound. Here's the songwriting. Here's the chop.
But see, it must have though. Like the reason why that was
sorry, hang on. Is that not possible anymore for a Skid Row, where the engineer of Airborne goes, you know what? And here's fucking Justin Hawkins from the Darkness who's gonna fucking help you fucking hammer out some courses, or no?
See, that's what they should do. Like that's definitely like as in the thing where they're like, let's get Tom Allen back on board, and maybe that'll inspire us to have some sort of better ideas.
Maybe they went, let's spend $10,000 on it and keep the rest because I'm living in a, I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean?
Because the two guys, the Halford album and the Dickinson album, they both went to Roy Z being all like, can you make us sound relevant to nowadays? And he was thinking, I can do that, but I want to make sure that these albums are good and they're not shit.
But hang on, Joe, that's not necessarily true. I don't think he did, because what he did was what was relevant to nowadays in 1996 would have been down-tuned, dun, 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 dun. It would have been like new metal, but Resurrection is proper heavy metal. That's one of the reasons why it's so brilliant. Now, Chemical Wedding has got a down-tuned Uriah Heep Hammond organ purple thing going on. Sorry, I was doing something else there.
I think both of them are great albums, and I think they both.
Yeah, but they're not indicative. The point is that they're not indicative of the time they're from, 96, 97. Otherwise, they would have been new metal.
I think they definitely are, you know. But just
come on, I think Resurrection isn't.
What I'm saying is that those lads are going in saying, let's make a modern sounding Halford album, and Roy Z saying, we can do that, but we're going to make sure that you're not making a shit album that people who like you are going to hate, because that's what Bruce Dickinson had made 3 solo albums at that stage that no one who listened to Bruce Dickinson liked.
True, and also Halford had
had to appeal to Maiden fans, right?
And Halford had made 2 with Trent Reznor or whatever
that no one was into. So that was they were saying, yeah, we can do this, but you also have to own up to the fact that your experiments over the last 5 years have not been popular. So
good, it's a good point. Yeah. No, it's a good point. I'm just like those 2 records, especially Resurrection. I listened to it the other day and I loved it at the time. I listened to it to death, and I played it for the first time in like 15, 20 years, and I was like, oh, this is a brilliant record. It is the best.
I couldn't believe the first time I heard that song, I was like, this is so cool. Like, this is like, it's just like being like a continuation of the Painkiller, right?
And I saw Halford at Gods of Metal in Italy somewhere in about 2002, and it was bizarre. He was like in the middle of the bill, and he walked out from like the side of the stage and just stood there looking at everybody while they were waiting for the intro to come on, and then he just like whatever, and they just went into they went into Painkiller, and we're like, oh fuck, he's gonna do Painkiller, and he smashed it. Like so much better than I saw Priest during the Painkiller area or whatever. And
that would have been class. You opened for Maiden on the Brave New World tour. Very, very good.
Yeah. But see, I think that Brave New World and what's the Priest album with the Angel of Retribution? They're both good records that were inspired by, I think, the comeback records of both Halford and Dickinson to be better. And then I think both of them kind of slowly fell away. But like, I think Brave New World is a brilliant Iron Maiden record. It's a brilliant, I would take 3 songs off it, but it's a brilliant Iron Maiden record.
Yeah, totally. It's just got back in the day, there wasn't room for 10 songs in the album, and now there is. Like, they would have been better trying to be still encumbered by manufacturing restrictions, you know?
Yeah.
But now that they can make their album 100 minutes long, they're just like, of course it should be 100 minutes long. Like,
well, I could take 3 songs off that to be B-sides of 12 inches, but that if you gave me 10 proper songs from that, I mean, it's a brilliant record. Ghost of the Navigator, Blood Brother.
Out of the Silent Planet.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I think it's the best.
But I think they probably set the bar too high for themselves, because when they came back with the 2 follow-up albums in the next couple of years, people were a bit nonplussed.
Well,
really.
Down to Death is a joke. That's a terrible record. I mean, you know, Passion Death.
Matter of Life and Death as well. Not great, really. Is
I
it?
like. Well, I will stand up for Matter of Life and Death. I think that's a kind of obscure epic metal, but quite dark record. But you know, brighter than 1,000 suns. These colors don't run. I think I'm a fan of Matter of Life and Death.
It's sort of, for some reason, it reminds me of those, like, you know, Jag Panzer, fucking Feeling of Corridor type records, where it's like,
you're not wrong. If Atlantean Codex had made a Matter of Life and Death, people would freak out about it. You know, like it's epic metal stuff in the vein of some Solstice, and like it's kind of plodding, and but I mean, I think it's a good record. I think it's better than what the fuck is the record after Matter of Life and Death with the alien stuff and the
Final Frontier.
That's yeah, I like that record, but
it's okay. Look, Book of Souls and
Book of Souls is good. Yeah,
like it's
I mean, I could do without the
consistent one.
What's the huge song, Master of the Sky or whatever?
Again, just like total indulgence because they can. That's like, there's nothing else to be said about those kind of tracks with Maiden, you know, where they're just like, we don't care about or like letting fucking the drummer write a song about Jesus called A Whole New Horizon, where you're just like, why is Ron Smallwood not able to now turn around and say, fuck off? You're not allowed to do that, mate. Like,
I think it's not dependent on record sales anymore because it's dependent on other things. I mean, what just pisses me off more is the eternal now sort of dungeon synth rehearsal room production on everything. Like Senjutsu or whatever it is. It's not a bad record, but can someone edit the songs, and can someone also give me a bass tone and a proper, like, we're tired of this rehearsal room. Like, it sounds like a brilliant rehearsal, but it should have sparkle and something extra on top. Also the shitty keyboard sounds, but it's not a bad record at all. I'm happy to have it, but it's missing. It sounds like there's a lot of layers of mud on top of the record. Again, like all of the last few.
Well, you know what? At least they're in that situation where they're doing what they want. I still think the Priest are in that zone where they're like the follow up to Firepower will most certainly tread the same boards.
Firepower's a good record, man. Good record.
Yeah, but like I think that's what I mean is that they're desperately in that zone of trying to make sure that they're not going to upset their fan base with another Nostradamus type record, you know.
Nostradamus is a terrible record. I was on some YouTube channel watching three lads discuss their best of Judas Priest, and one lad went, I think Nostradamus is as good as the whatever, and I just turned it off. And I don't usually comment under people's YouTube channels, but I was so annoyed, I just commented like, if you fucking think Nostradamus is fuck off. I'm not watching you.
Don't you dare come to Ireland. We'll fucking kill you.
For a minute more. And then I watched it, and then the next day I woke up and turned on the laptop or the desktop, and it was like, ting, 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 ting. You have 8 notifications of your asshole comment on someone else's YouTube, which is like, yeah, well, it shows how open-minded you are if you didn't watch the rest of the video. And I was just thought to myself, yeah, I'm not open-minded.
No, but I don't need to be. It's the same as like, I don't need to be open-minded when we're talking about Virtual 11 or, you know, whatever. If you know that something is horrendous, there's no point in getting into a discussion with someone about how good it is, you know?
I always thought that, I've thought this for 30 or 40 years. Be closed-minded. Be orthodox. Don't give an inch to, I don't want funky bass in my whatever. Be completely.
Like, I want it in my Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. I don't want it in my early 90s thrash music.
No, so fuck off. Be closed-minded. I thought that I well, of course that's a black metal thing, but it was just like being closed-minded is a virtue, because then nothing ever progresses and it's always the same. And so therefore, I was just like, I didn't admittedly go back into the YouTube comments and go, hey, I was just like, really, you like Nostradamus? Idiot. And then I left the crime of the scene of the crime. Do you ever post? Do you ever get drunk?
Yeah, of course.
Do you ever get drunk and just post a like a cranky comment?
Yeah, and it's usually about things like that where people are being all like, Gary Moore's a shit guitar player, and you're like, what are you saying? If you ever come to Newry in Northern Ireland, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, I think Rory Gallagher is overrated. Fuck off. Fuck you. And you're like, if I could get a hold of you, yeah. Anyway, so this particular moment was like, yeah, well, Priest, you know, Nostradamus is one of their best records ever. Because like, I can't take it.
No, and you shouldn't have to, you know.
Not as a heavy metal warrior who
No,
has, you know, I mean, been
death wish
through.
shirt on, or a flotsam and jetsam jumper. You know, this is the circles we run in. You know,
Is that a hooded jumper,
it,
or
it
or
it
is it
is
an
a
old
hooded
sweatshirt?
jumper. Yeah, it is indeed.
It's one of them
From
old sweatshirts, is it?
yeah, from 1980 whatever, 1980 yardage.
So like it's kind of like tight around the muffin tops and sort of
Yeah,
around
it's a
the
wee bit too
sleeves.
short these days
Yeah,
as well, due to
yeah, yeah.
my growth.
I have a pleasure to kill one which I kind of garroted, and of course I did like cut up all my shirts, but it was like a sweatshirt from 86 or 87. When you went like that, it just went bloop, and the sleeves went up to here, and it just went and so it
There
was
you go, ready
like a
to
sort of a
audition for Bullet Boys.
pleasure to fuck you.
What is happening, dude?
I don't know what we're talking about. I can't remember.
It wasn't worth remembering, whatever it was.
Let me ask you this. My sister bought me an expensive bottle of whiskey.
Lovely.
Is it though? Oh, actually, I'll tell you what we'll do first is that here we are, is a original Pleasure to Kill shirt, but which had like long, sort of like, it's like a school jersey. And on the back
Lovely.
is this, but it's,
The lads.
I can't show you. It's a weird, fluffy, like downy kind of heavy, like it's a sweaty, heavy quality. I got it somewhere in the 80s, but I've even cut the little elastic, elastic band from the bottom off that made it go whoop, and like sort of balloon out in your midriff.
That could have been, maybe you considered that posery in 1989, so all elastic must have been removed immediately.
Oh, there's no doubt that all the elastic of the sleeves was cut off first, and then because it made you balloon into a kind of like a pompadour sort of I don't know, pompadour. That's, where the fuck did I come up with that word? Anyway, it just didn't look cool, so you cut it off so it would be like would hang fucking loose. You know what I mean? But somewhere in the 80s I got it. But it's a weird. It's like something, you know, when you have like something where a dog would sleep. This sort of heavy textured sort of fabric coat that you go, the coat's too old, let the dog sleep on it. Not that I like dogs.
This is before the era of Fruit of the Loom, man. So every person who was printing T-shirts was printing them on their own village's best fabric, you know.
Well, this feels like that. It's fucking feels terrible. It's very sweaty, but it's an original Pleasure to Kill shirt, as signed by Mille, who signed it in 2000 or 1999 when Primordial played in Essen. Creator were rehearsing. We're playing with Essen with Immortal, and Creator were rehearsing, and we could hear them. We were sitting in the backstage, and I was like, it was like in the afternoon. I was like, I think Creator are rehearsing downstairs, and the lads were like, no. And then we're walking around. We're like stood in a place where you could hear. It's fucking Creator. Like we were like, you just had that thrill of like, oh shit, it's Creator rehearsing in the basement. You know, it was pretty cool. And so I gave him that shirt, and he went, "Yeah, old one. You like the old ones?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, but you know, I'll give it to you. I like Endorama." And he was like, "What? Really? You like Endorama?" And I, you know, actually, oddly enough, Chosen Few or whatever it was came on today. And except for the kind of crappy spoken word singing, there's some okay riffs on Endorama. I don't begrudge Creator Endorama or changing.
No, not really. You know, it was a little holiday for them. Like all the German bands had different versions of that, didn't they? Like Sodom made those death metal records, and like then some punk records, and then like didn't Tankard make like the Tank Ward albums and all that?
See, I don't have any. Tankard is like I have no clue. I know the morning after I bought that when it came out, and then I don't know anything. So
after that.
That's 34 years ago.
But like, I would assume that there's a whole bunch of bands like Mekong Delta who made records the whole way through the 90s, you know, making weird
interesting
cello or Holy Moses and stuff, you know.
I have some Mekong Delta. Yeah, maybe they did. I don't know. I mean, I remember having a chat with Mille from Creator about that, I mean, he just told me like I couldn't make Violent Revolution without making Endorama. I had to get the shit out of my system, and then it didn't work, and then you had to come back around. I mean, you can't. Maybe you just can't keep making the same. You can't keep doing it forever. I don't know. You know. I mean, I love Renewal. I love Renewal. It's one of my favorite Creator records. I think it's Europe After the Rain is fucking brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Realitas Controller, whatever. I mean,
which one has Phobia and all on it? Is it Cause for Conflict? Is it or
Outcast? Isn't it? One of those two. They're good records.
Must have been very strange for them though, and Sodom, like both end up on Gun Records, where you're just like, what's going on, guys? Like we now in the realm of selling 5,000 records per album or 10,000 records.
I don't know. I don't know if they were selling that low, but I still think you're still selling copy in 94, 95. I still think you're selling 40, 50,000, but you've gone from selling 300,000 to 40,000. You know what I mean? You're still selling a lot of records, 50,000. I still think you're selling, but you're not selling. Yeah, of course. You're not growing. You're coming down. I think Outcast and what's the other fucking one? Phobia?
Is it not a Cause for Conflict or Renewal? And then
Cause for Conflict are okay. And
it's the one with the guy from Whiplash playing drums, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, there's one of the albums from the late 90s where Ventura had a little holiday and they got Tony.
He didn't play any of his records. Well, Tommy from Coroner played on those records as well. I don't. He can't be the drummer.
Yeah, there's one of them that he plays drums on. Because it's one of those things, you know, kind of like Tom Hunting in Exodus, where he was there most of the time, but there's like little blips where sometimes he was somewhere else.
It depends on the drugs.
He was on Angel, which at that stage, him and Lee Altus, after he left Exodus.
Well, let me tell you.
The USA incarnation of Angel, which for a little while in the late 80s.
Okay, let me tell you who the drummer is on these records. We can do this in real time.
All we have to do is add the glasses.
Okay. The only album to not feature Jürgen Vento Rio is one of these records.
Quite.
Rob Fioretti and drum blah 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 blah.
I think it's late 90s. It's one of the Gun records anyway.
Keep talking amongst yourselves. Did you buy any of those Creator reissues?
Nope.
Like in the little package sleeve things?
No, I can't be arsed, man. I just can't be hold at all with any form of physical media of that description. Like, it's just a pain in the arse.
Cause for Conflict is after Renewal, but Renewal is 92, and it took them until 95. And you're right, Joe Cangliose replaced Ventor. Joe Cangliose for Whiplash fame replaced him for the album.
Yeah, man.
95, wow. I know that Joe Cangliose, didn't he try and replace Dave Lombardo for like 5 shows during Rain and Blood and kind of went...
No, he did. I think he did the European tour. So he did.
No, he did. No, he didn't. He only did, as I understand, he did 4 or 5 shows in Canada and in North America. And then they went, we can't do this because he just wasn't good enough.
It just seems like such a bizarre choice of a drummer to be all like, imagine like listening to Whiplash's albums and being all like, sounds pretty much the same drumming wise, but Slayer here, we'll just get that guy. He seems good.
Hang on, I need to get a can. You can talk to the punters.
There you go. And interestingly enough, Nick Menza from Megadeth auditioned for Slayer whenever Dave Lombardo had his little holiday in 1987. And just blew it. Didn't have the nerves for it. And in the Megadeth, what's it called again? From the Vaults videos, you can hear Dave Mustaine slagging him off about that as well.
Yeah, keep talking. It's gold.
Keep talking over there, guys.
You should have your own podcast.
Called Also Did You Know? Also, did you know this guy auditioned for this band? So that would have been around the time that Frank Blackfire left Creator, right? Wouldn't it? Late, about like mid-90s. So I presume what happened was they got dropped from the label. There was no more money, and Ventor and Frank Blackfire went and got real jobs, and Millie became the sole owner of the brand around that part.
What year are we talking? 91, 92?
Oh, no, after that, like after the renewal tour, so like 93, 94 kind of time, when there was nothing going on. Because that's whenever the original bass player and stuff left as well, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Rob Fioretti or whatever his name is, I think he left after renewal as well.
I've heard some people saying that he used to do some writing back in the day, but I've never.
What do you mean writing?
As in, like, wrote some of the lyrics and some of the riffs and
Yeah,
stuff for the.
I think so. I think so. I think he has some songwriting credits.
Okay, because it's weird, isn't it? Like he sort of just disappeared from the scene and never really came out even for a song or something. You would have thought instead of getting that guy from Dragon Force, they would have got him back or something, you know?
Who's the guy from Dragon Force? Oh, the bass player.
Pierre Jacques, whatever his name is, he plays for Creator nowadays.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. I don't know who he is. He's English, isn't he? I don't know anything about him. I don't know. Maybe Rob just went like, "Hey, I'm out. I got 3 kids. I'm moving to the burbs. Fuck off. Stop."
Totally. The guy who played drums for or bass for Exodus was just like, I'm a carpenter now, you know, and the carpentry bucks are a lot better than nothing, like, you know. So
what's his name? Rob McKillop.
yeah,
What's the last record he played on?
Impact is imminent. I think he was just all like, listen, I can't keep taking time off from the carpentry job to rock out with my fellow meth heads in Exodus or whatever.
Yeah, well, maybe he just wasn't a meth head. That's the problem. It was a like a Hawkwind situation. You know, you're on the wrong drugs.
Get out.
You know, maybe he was on downers, like he was a Xanax boy. You know, because if you're going to be all into speed and meth, you know, you've got to. That's a particular kind of person who's got to follow that on. You know, it's a weird though. It's a weird then if they were all into that, their records weren't faster and better.
Capitol Records, man, just came in and fucking fucked up the whole show, didn't they? Like somebody said though, like I can't remember if it was Gary Holt or something. One of the guys in the band said that he heard that it was a tax write-off, and Capitol Records signed the band specifically so that they could fucking have it as a tax write-off, with the idea of signing them in 90 and then dropping them in 92.
Do you think so? That seems like a weird fucking. That seems a bit much, doesn't it? I mean, you're talking about
people are just given total free reign to make Impact is imminent, and I think that like the assumption was that because they were now on a major label that they would make a more accessible record, and they went the opposite direction. But I think the label were like, just what the fuck was that? Whatever you do, you're not allowed to do that again.
This is the same story again and again and again with metal bands between 89 and 94 that tried to jump onto that major label thing, because major labels were not happy with 200,000 or 300,000 sales. They wanted 2 million. And no one, whether it was Cathedral, Carcass, or Morbid Angel at the time, nobody was. That was just not going to happen for extreme metal. You know, there's no way they were going to move to that many records. I mean, if Slayer were barely scraping 2 million, there's no.
See, that's the whole thing, isn't it?
There's no way Carcass were going to sell 2 million records.
But I think that was the whole reason in every A&R department of every major label in America was like, well, Metallica are doing it, so why can't you do it? You know. What's the difference between Queensryche and, like, you know, Crimson Glory? Why aren't Crimson Glory selling 500,000 or 1 million copies?
But these bands probably were. I mean, Operation Mindcrime was doing 2 million, 1.5 million, 2 million.
Yeah, it was.
They were selling. They weren't
selling that, were they? Like Crimson Glory weren't, and they were on major labels.
They were still doing enough within their budget. I think what it is that everyone had aspirations beyond their. With the realism of their sort of budget. I mean, Crimson Glory selling 250,000 records is great. It's making money. If you keep it within its boundaries, is doing really well. But Crimson Glory is not, boom, all of a sudden up to 2 million. That's just not the way things work, I think, or even worked in 88. Operation Mindcrime is a particular record. It's very, I mean, there's not many. Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 and 2, Operation Mindcrime, they're breakout records, but not. I mean, Vicious Rumors and all the others didn't get to break out behind them. I mean, Sabotage sold quite a lot of records, but I doubt if there's a Sabotage record that sold 1 million copies.
No, there's that. Well, maybe one of the late mid '90s ones. You never know, but
I think they would have. I think they hit maybe 400,000, maybe.
Vicious Rumors were on a major as well, right?
Yeah.
But I think part of the problem is that whenever you're making like Forbidden or Exodus albums, they were only shelling out like 40 grand or 20 grand or somewhere in between to make the record for a month. And things like Transcendence or whatever were taking longer and more involved and required more artwork, more image, more everything, you know, like the video was going to cost a whole bunch more money, you know.
What strikes me is that if everyone had been a bit clever and just reduced their economic aspirations to go, we can make Transcendence for 20 grand, not 220 grand. It's possible. Cut corners, and then we don't have such huge overheads. And when you don't make 478,000 copies sold, we don't have to drop you. I mean, like if you cut everything, you cut everything down, you know.
But you're 100% right, and that was the fucked up thing, was that so many of these labels were looking at Metallica again or Maiden and saying, "But look, this band are doing this really well." But Metallica and Maiden were both running massively tight ships until, like, whenever Metallica started selling millions of albums, you know, during the Aussie tour or whatever. Until such time, they'd been on a major label for 2 years. At that stage, you know.
But imagine
things, as you said, they were happy to sell 200,000 records in America, and then on the next album, the idea was to sell at least 200,000 again, but not to move from that to 2 million records, you know.
But think about, like, Keeper of the Seven Keys 1 and 2 were 1.5 and like 1.8 million records. They're huge records on an independent label that nobody's ever fucking heard of from Germany called Noise Records. I mean, if you move Noise to like Atlantic in 90, they're going to sell less. I mean,
no, but was it not? Were they not licensed to EMI in America though?
It's possible. It's possible. They're still Noise Records. I.e., they came from underground heavy metal, all of a sudden to sell 1.5 million, 2 million records. But the idea that we're going to break this band to 5 or 4, forget it. Be happy with where they are in that status. Build on that for the next ones. But instead, they overshot, and we get Pink Bubbles Go Ape and whatever, Heavy Metal Hamsters and all this rubbish. And they were done. Instead of going, okay, let's like literally make an extra, fucking wall around the castle walls and like consolidate that. We're like, no, we're going to build fucking huge spires and they're all going to collapse.
That's what Overkill did.
That was the heavy metal analogy, wasn't it? Towers and
spires. Right, fortress-filled analogy, indeed. But that's what Overkill did. They, I think in about 1994, they bought a tour bus in Europe and they bought another tour bus in America.
But that seems like a logical idea. Rest of you could hire it out to people.
Totally. So it was costing them nothing to go on tour in really lucrative places like Germany, where they were still able to pull 400 people and, you know, go and do 30 shows in a row in Germany and the Benelux, you know. But I think you just need to have shrewd business people involved. There's so many bands out there where you can tell from the get-go that they were being mismanaged, or, you know, the person managing them just had, you know, hopes but no actual know-how of how to get the band from A to B.
Well, I mean, like, I think that what happened was that so many bands were rising so quickly. Everyone was trying to sort of tether their, how shall we say? They were trying to tether their mass to whatever was rising so quickly, and no one was happy with, oh, this band are growing to 100,000 sales, to 200,000 sales. They were like, yeah, but Crimson Glory, hey guys, look, this band is Queensryche has broken out to selling 1.5 million. We surely should be selling 400,000. And like lots of bands back then were selling a good amount of records, but if they just took less of an advance, and I don't know, maybe it would have worked out easier. But then again, you take your advance because that's the only thing you're going to get. Like Vicious Rumors. I mean, what do you think is the biggest selling Vicious Rumors album? Digital Dictator, Welcome to the Ball.
Welcome to the Ball, because it's got Don't You Wait For Me was an MTV video, and there's another song from that album that had a video as well.
So Welcome to the Ball, but how many copies do you think that was selling in 1990? 120,000?
Well, I think Welcome to the Ball is 91. I would imagine kind of like okay-ish.
You know, what is okay-ish? Is it 50,000? Is it 75,000?
No, it'd be more than that. Like, cause
think so?
Major. I would have thought like 150,000 copies.
Yeah, but then why aren't those people coming to see them now? Why are they playing to 72 people? And or is it just they mismanaged their legacy? I don't know. Like, I'm a Vicious Rumors fan, but I feel that like that huge overblown piano ballady, Dead Winter Dead, Sabotage thing, it didn't age well because once it was gone, it was gone. And heavy metal fans stayed with Sabotage and Vince Rumors. They were like, hey, we only want Hold the Mountain King or Digital Dictator. We don't give a shit about your fucking whatever you were doing in 1990, 91 to try and be big. Forget it. And it's weird, like, so all the transient people just went, that forget it. But I would be surprised if Vicious Rumors sold 150,000 copies of Welcome to the Ball.
I would say so, like, because it's very similar kind of fare to, Human Factor by Metal Church, or
is that a big set?
Symbol of Salvation by Armored Saint, and that was the kind of I know sort of.
But I honestly, do you think any of those records sold over 100,000 copies? 100,000.
Oh yeah, definitely. Metal Church one and the Armored Saint one, I'd say probably around that. But
I was going to check, but both my phone and my iPad died.
Yeah, but see, the problem is your problem is that Nielsen SoundScan only goes back to 1991, and you want the juicy figures from 1981 onwards.
I could have at least put it in to check it out, but both of them died at the same time. It's like there's almost a sort of Gama bomb curse on them both, a conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? Do you have anything to say about that?
Not one thing, not one ghostly thing.
Welcome to the ball.
We're both going to the dreamy land of Birmingham now next month, aren't we? We're going to a gig.
Should we talk about that, or?
Well, we can skirt around the issue a bit. We were both asked to go on holiday to the Bahamas.
I was thinking about that, a Primordial Gama bomb, kind of like heaven versus hell sort of show. You know what I mean? Would bring out some people.
Yeah, maybe we should make a Christian album, or you guys could make a Christian album and we could make a pagan album. What about that?
Yeah. Well, maybe
it'd be a hard sell.
I know. I think your heaven versus hell, sort of grump versus grumpy versus
cheerful.
Yeah. Cheerful is not the right word. What would the word be?
Happy-go-lucky.
Exuberance. I don't know. Exuberance.
Jaunty music.
Jaunt versus gloom. Could be.
And we could get Cruachan to be the man in the middle.
The adjutanks, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we should talk about that, because I don't know if it's going to happen. But like,
oh well, I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like, where as much as you're like, gigs are good and gigs are tops and all that, you're still going to Birmingham to go and do a gig. Like, I suppose it'd be better if you were like opening for Judas Priest at Birmingham NEC. That would be good, wouldn't
it? But you're opening for us. How terrible is that?
Oh no,
that's terrible. Like,
it is, isn't it? I'm gonna have a word. I'll show them our Spotify stats and be all like, "Excuse me, Sonny, haven't you checked out Spotify?
Don't you know who we are? It's got all the characteristics of a hard cancel. But anyway, we'll see.
So like, it's just Lordy, and then there's a lot of British thrash bands and stuff out of it, isn't there?
Lordy are playing, are they?
Lordy are playing.
I remember being on a tour of Finland many years ago, and the drummer of Lordy was driving us around, and he was so bummed out. He was so bummed out because nobody knew who he was, and all he was trying to do was chat up girls for the entire time we were hanging out for like this 5-6 days, and they were like, "Who? What?" And he was like, "I'm the drummer of Lordy," and they were like, "Yeah, right." And he was so bummed out because every night back at the hotel, he'd be like, "I'm a famous guy, but no one knows who I am." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, it's a hard life, hard knock life. Wearing a mask."
We had a similar situation once where we were getting a lift from the airport to Headbangers Open Air, and Tokyo Blade were playing, and we were all singing Tokyo Blade in the back seats, and then started being all like, "I wonder what the singer from Tokyo Blade's doing these days," and then started slagging off the singer from Tokyo Blade, and then the guy who was driving the van was like, "I'm the singer for Tokyo Blade."
Wow, really?
But like, it wasn't the singer from the 80s. The guy who's with him now is obviously some young fella who also drives a van or whatever.
He wasn't the guy who was doing the kick flips and everything on the 85 video. Because Tokyo Blade is interesting because they had a great debut, And they started kind of like on a Van Halen sort of, frilly knickers, sort of outside the leather pants sort of thing.
See, as you were saying there about, going down the Sunset Strip with like palm trees and stuff.
Yeah.
See, whenever you take that away and set it in Middlesbrough again, that's where like Tokyo Blade, like, Tiger Tails, it all seems a bit rainy for that sort of crack, doesn't it? Like,
well, you're from the north. Tell me this. How the fuck then is glam rock so popular in Belfast in the 1980s? Because all these bands, Tesla, Rat, Winger, blah blah, they don't. The lads don't even book them in Dublin because they can't even get the fee down.
Like Y&T play in Belfast all the time. They've played here like loads of times.
But not just Y&T, but how come hair metal was huge in the north in the 80s?
God knows. Like, I literally have no idea at all. I know that there were some bands that came.
An answer.
Aerosmith played the north a whole bunch, didn't it? Around then, and like Aerosmith.
No, that's way bigger than that. I'm talking about Spit and Sawdust, glam rock bands. Like, what the fuck are Tesla, Winger doing playing in Belfast to like almost 1,000 people, and they can't even get booked in Dublin because the promoter's like, what are you talking about? Winger in Dublin won't even pull. I mean, it might do 200, but your fee will have to come down like 90% or whatever. Like, but in the north,
like Dublin doesn't have a lot of small bars like that. Belfast and Northern Ireland, there's tons of wee places where you can fit 300 people in or 400.
Okay,
and
but no, I mean,
you can book those kind of bands in there.
You're not quite grasping my culturally. Such a difficult place is Northern Ireland to grow up in 1985, 86, 87, for example. We take the north of what is. How the fuck are you going like, oh, I'm teasing my hair up to here, wearing stilettos, and black leather pants, and a shredded t-shirt, and going out in 87 in Belfast and going, fuck off. This is how I am. Like, how tough do you have to be? I remember nearly getting into a fight with Tiger Tails once. I was with Ian from Destroyer 666, and we'd been taking yokes all night. So we're absolutely pilled up to our eyeballs that we could barely see. And we're in London, and I was just looking at these lads like, and my mate was like, stop staring at them. I was like, and he's like, stop staring at them. And then there was a few shoving and pushing, and it turned out it was Tiger Tails, who were just they were just like, over in their high heels to go like, yeah, fuck. And they would have knocked the fuck out of us because you couldn't be from the valleys in Wales and not be tough and look like Tiger Tails. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you know what? The common answer to both those things is probably escapism, isn't it? Like,
exactly,
people
but you have to. That means you have to be tough as nails and want escapism. A romantic hooligan.
I can bring it back to Dokken though, because Dokken supported Accept in the Ulster Hall in 1986, and they had their tour bus burnt to the ground because it had a Union Jack on the side of it or something like that.
Yeah. But do you see what I mean? Like, imagine like glam rock is super popular in Belfast in 86, and think of the shit that's going on in Belfast in 86, and just the fucking police at the end of every road and the turnstiles and everything. And you're a glam rock chap with huge hair and stilettos, and you have to trudge through all this stuff. But yeah, you're probably right. It's escapism, isn't it? I guess. Same way in the 70s, glam rock was popular in terrible areas of the north of England because it was an anecdote to the miserable conditions they were living in.
And you know what's probably worth saying as well? That a lot of the gigs that started coming to Dublin, the Top Hat style gigs in the late 80s, early 2000s, Suicidal Tendencies, Sepultura, Obituary, Death. I don't think a lot of that stuff really came to Northern Ireland at all. Like,
Northern Ireland is not, at least in my impression, Northern Ireland is not death metal. Like, it's nothing extreme metal. It's not underground stuff. Not like that at all. The South is way more was into way more extreme stuff. But the North Winger could play and have like 800 people. Trying to do a Winger show. No, I think people in the South would underestimate who would show up. I think there'd be 300 people there. They would go.
I think it'd be more than that, man. I went to see Mr. Big in Temple Bar Music Centre, and it was sold out. So
yeah, maybe there's more people than people think I'm not sure, but anytime I've ever seen a band like that down here, there's been like a third of the crowd of Northern Ireland.
Like, the big problem in Dublin though is the snobbiness of venues. You know, I was doing another podcast there, right? And
What?
what do you say? But one of the guys was saying that Sally Longs in Galway booked some band to come over from England, a metal band, and then a few days before they were meant to go, said we're cancelling the gig because we want to get Christmassy punters in and we don't want to scare them away with metal.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's the same with the South. I mean, every venue we'll take a gig with maybe bands with instruments till 10, 10:15, then get the fuck out. And we need either like gay salsa night, or we need like an electronic night or dance music night at 10:30. And even if it only has 40 people in it, everyone needs to get the fuck out. We saw this last weekend with the Bad and Incarnate show.
Was it over at 10:30 so that it could be
before that
refitted
the people in that venue were fucking terrible. They were horrific. They were such dickheads. The whole premise of the venue is like open-mindedness and mindedness and tolerance and this, that, and the other. And they just were complete wankers. And they just wanted everyone who was there for the gig out. You know, like, and and they cut the gig short and trying to just
really.
No, it's too loud, it's whatever, it's whatever. And then a couple of metalheads hung out in the venue downstairs, and it was clear they were like, you could see like security, and people were like, how the fuck do we throw them all out without it being like 1987? It was like, guys, really? You think all the metalheads or the Bad and Incarnate show are going to disrupt your drag show?
Yeah, I think that's the thing in Belfast is there's three or four bars that would. There's 3 or 4 bars that would love to have whatever in, really, you know, like they just have, you know, like the old-fashioned Dublin venues where it's just a stage upstairs in a big public,
well,
you know.
I mean, there was 30, 40, 50 people downstairs, and they had their drag queen DJ thing, whatever's going on. And you wanted to go to the security who were like super hyped up to like throw us out and everything. And like, mate, it's fine. You can mix the metal crowd and the drag, the gay crowd. It's fine. Leave them. They can be together. It'll be fine. And it was just super antagonistic and like just super dickheadish. And you were like,
where was it on in the
pint downstairs or upstairs in the pint? Yeah, and they're just dickheads anyway. But it's besides the point. It was just sort of, oh yeah, okay, everything has to be done by 10:30 if you have an instrument. 4-hour DJing, blah blah blah, whatever it is, and get the fuck out, and not just get the fuck out.
It definitely sucks, man. Especially considering that, like, you know,
metalheads drink pints. They pay at the bar. They're not fucking doing Molly in the toilet and then drinking a bottle of water. They're pinting people, and they will. But it was clear, like, and they were just, we don't want you here.
Even remember whenever the couple of times we playing on the Rocks a couple of times, and I seem to remember in there it was even the same thing. Even though it's a tiny wee club in the middle of nowhere, they were still wanted it finished by 11:30 or whatever.
And then they want you all out for 50 people all standing there, well, taking drugs and drinking water, and or less, you know. It's just greedy stuff. People want a double set of bookings every night, you know. So whatever. I mean, and that's why that you just can't go and see, like, be relaxed and see a late night thing. Go and see a band. You know, there was a lot of people there to see a band Incarnate, like 70, 80, 90 people. But like, get the fuck out of here by 10:15. It's like, okay.
Well, you know what, man? It's good to see them still rocking about, isn't it? Because people seem to be into their new album, and it seems a bit more death metal-y, because they had some sort of slightly sort of more offbeat kind of stuff there for a while, didn't they?
They went a bit D-beat punky. No, I mean, look, they're a band who, I mean, I remember their demo was Bereaved in 93, 94. I saw them in maybe even 93, early 93. I mean, the first Bad and Incarnate album, whatever the fuck it's called, When the Demons Come, whatever. It's a fucking brutal record for people who like, you know, like super scuzzy black death metal of like, it should be revered more in terms of like just the filthy Beharit style worship that people have. It's a fucking savage record. Now the records after Here and There, Nadir is good. Not necessarily my thing, but they're lifers, man. They're there forever. And it's still brutal and it's still filthy. one thing I did notice, and something we talked about before, is that how old the crowd is now.
Yeah, bald heads everywhere.
Middle-aged death metal.
But the thing is, man, these people have money, and like I'm sure Aben and McCartney cleared up at the March, man, and made.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like I see this as well. There is a moment, and I think it's been very profound. Let's say post-pandemic, where that 2.5, 3 year hiatus all of a sudden moved you along, expedited you to this moment where, like when Primordial made our DVD, we were 32, 33. We were still young, with a young crowd, young men. And now we're encroaching on 50. And it's like, oh, you're not young anymore. And a person who's 20 ain't gonna be listening to.
Well, you never know. Man, people discover generations of music, like, and everything comes.
I know. I mean, some will, as a percentage will, but I'm just saying. I'm saying the body politic of your fans ages with you, and so now, you could see that. I clearly at the Band and Carnage shows, like, wow, everyone is 42 to 54, 55. Like, there is no fucking young people here at all. No problem. I mean, why not? I mean, they can roll with you for another 10 years. Why not? But it's funny because death metal was such a vibrant, youthful thing in 94, 92, 91, 93. You were part of a youthful movement. Now, 30 years later, you're 50 and all the fans are now 50. And you're like, what the fuck are 18-year-olds?
There's a lot of like hardcore bands and stuff like that.
Yeah, like
in Ireland at the minute that have lots of young fans, So there's definitely like aggressive music out there that young people like. I think part of the problem is, and I said the same thing about thrash. There's not enough good thrash bands in Ireland. There's not enough good death metal bands in Ireland.
I mean, firstly, I have to say, I think young people suck that much. I don't think they would care about that. But I mean, if you went to a Power Trip show 3 years ago, you would see young people. Sure, gatekeeper, gatecreeper, whatever the fuck they're called. There's young versions of old death metal bands, like Obituary are going to bring old dudes, but go and see Gatekeeper. Is it Creeper or Gatekeeper? Fuck, I can't remember. It is. Good band, or Power Trip. I mean, when I hear Power Trip, I hear, hey, I heard this in '88.
So is this gruesome left to die or left to rot thing? Will that be just old people who like death, or will that be like maybe younger people who might like, I know, Exhumed or whatever, like, or what?
Exhumed is 30 years old. I don't know. I don't know how it goes. I think that the analog nature of being into a band is something percentages decreases throughout the ages. And I don't think many 15 to 20-year-olds are listening to a new rock band. And then I hear something like Polyphia, and it just sounds like it's just like, elevator.
Yeah, they're not really great songs. Like, it's more just here's a load of
it's just here. I'm a cute guy with a neck tattoo who does a guitar run through. Does it mean anything to young people anymore? I don't.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Tune in next time and we will find out the answer somehow.
Well, that's the good way to do it. Hang on.